So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was the half-blooded demon king and had Artemis as wives as his mistress? Movie 1. Idiotic son of the squid, Mr. D said as he sipped his grape juice. Dealing with Poseidon's son was a headache, especially one who constantly decided to jump into a pit of trouble for the fun. Sorry Chiron, but there's nothing more I can do. The god smirked at the expression of annoyance and frustration on the trainer of heroes. After so many loses at the card table, it was worth making the centaur miserable like he was without his alcohol. And it showed on his face. Can you please take this seriously? Chiron asked as he tried not to let his emotions out on the god before him. The centaur's tail flickered back and forth as his emotions waged under his skin. Jackson left without permission to join a quest that our residential sea demigod is like his father. Besides, Lieutenant Nightshade may straighten him out, commented the lazy god before he burped. Wiping his mouth and then his shirt, Mr. D straightened up in his seat. We both know that prophecies will be played out the way they're meant to. For good or ill intentions, Percy Jackson was meant to go on this adventure by the fates. Most likely only because they got drunk on wine again during a rave or whatever mortals are calling those parties. Huntress Phoebe was chosen by Zoe, and as she explained to me before she took off, this is a land without rain. Nodding his head, the god snapped his fingers, causing the deck of cards to shuffle. I doubt it. There is only one geological feature described as such, and I doubt Apollo or the fates will allow such a literal description of an event that will take place. Silence filled the big house as the two immortals thoughts about the questions surrounding the question of the goddess of the hunt. The sound of the shuffling cards, the chimes and distant voices of the campers and the hunters filled the room. Out the window Chiron could see the camp and its inhabitants. He knew every one of those who called this place home and many of the hunters. Perhaps I should go talk to our newest member, Chiron thought to himself in an attempt not to worry about what the future may or might not bring. Worried as he may be, he still was a teacher and a counselor for all that called the camp home. Or perhaps go check on the condition of Miss Phoebe. You have that look in your eye again. Chiron chuckled at the statement. Oh, so you want to go talk with our newest member? No, I will not deal with a brat that calls me wine dude. Flipping open another wine magazine, the god walked to the card table. You in? Not right now. I need to go see how our newest member is and on the condition our current resident in the infirmary is holding up. Before the remaining hunters and campers get into another fight, again. You go do that, Mr. D, Chiron said as he rubbed his temples to prevent a headache from forming. The god merely hummed in response to his name. Seeing that it would get him nowhere, the trainer of heroes went to go check on the situation with Phoebe's condition and then deal with another matters. Upon entering the infirmary, Chiron was pleased to see that his patient was awake. How are you doing, Miss Phoebe? Like the time I was humiliated by you back in the 13th century. She moaned as she shifted her weight on the cot. The older immortal gave her a small smile. You did not believe that I was a capable teacher then. I do recall that Artemis did try and warn you not to let your pride blind you. Reaching down, he checked her temperature and vital signs. You're lucky that there was enough time for the blood to seep in more than it did to your system. But it's okay, right? I was a part of the prophecy and I was lost the land without rain. Shifting his weight caused Phoebe's eyes to widen then fall. I see. Who was my replacement? The horseman coughed into his fist. Initially Zoe did not want a fifth member, but apparently fate had other plans. Phoebe smiled. So, I'm guessing it wasn't a hunter, but there are plenty of demigods in the camp. Mr. Jackson took it upon himself to be the fifth member. Silence filled the infirmary as the huntress took in the words. However, instead of randomly cursing the fact that her mistress was to be saved by a boy, she only groaned and reached for something in the shadows. After feeling around for a moment, she brought out a book. I only read a bit, but it explains why he was in here, she said as she handed the object to Chiron. It was a book with a silver hardcover with a title that read from the other side in orange and yellow writing. I found it over on the bookshelf. I've never seen it before. Looking at it, Chiron could tell that it wasn't one of his collection of books he placed for reading for recovering demigods. Flipping it over, he read the writing on the back. When her fight with Atlas is interrupted by Luke using the power of Kronos, Artemis, goddess of the hunt and moon, finds herself in the apartment of a familiar whiskered blonde. Low on power, badly hurt, and possibly being hunted, the huntress decides to hide inside the most unlikeliest of places, Naruto's soul. Only one problem, she isn't alone in there. The amphitheater was filled with chatter as Chiron stood next to the fire. Thank you all for waking up so soon and joining me here this morning. Seeing that he had not gotten any attention yet from the campers, he looked over to Mr. D for help. Finding none, he was about to yell out when the fire burst 30 feet into the air, causing all present to be quiet. Seeing that he had the attention of all those attending thanks to a certain goddess hiding by the hearth, Chiron once more addressed the crowd of demigods and hunters. Thank you for paying attention. Miss Phoebe, who is still recuperating from her predicament, has found something interesting that I will be sharing with you. Does it have to do with that book? Asked Nico as he yawned. Mr. D answered with a bored tone. A book. Wonderful. Perhaps next time a talent show so I can heckle you lot. Not a bad idea. The talent show, not the heckling. But yes, a book. It seems that the fates wanted this to be read to all of you for some reason or another. Seeing that it was time for breakfast soon, I chose to start now. Muttering and groans came from the campers who liked to sleep in. But seeing no one speaking outright, the old trainer opened the book to read. From the other side, Chapter 1, Clang, Crash, Kraka Boom, Clang, Clang, Asterisk. Atop a blackened mountain, several figures could be seen locked in combat as a massive dark fortress seemed to be slowly building itself around them. A young girl with pitch black hair, wearing punk clothes, and wielding a spear and shield fought against an older teen boy with sandy blonde hair with an odd dual-colored sword. Several members of Ares' cabin cheered, much to the discomfort of those related to Luke or were close to him. Travis Stoll glanced at the closest son of Ares. "Do you mind?" "Nope," said Mark as he hollered louder. Another girl with similar black hair, a silvery hunting outfit, and a silver circlet on her brow was crouched next to an injured and bound blonde girl, shooting an expertly made silver-lined hunting bow towards our main focus. "Go Zoe," cheered a random huntress, a seemingly young girl with auburn hair, silver eyes, and lightly tanned skin littered with cuts that oozed golden blood struggled to support two silver hunting blades as they blocked a massive bronze javelin. Said javelin was wielded by a tall, excessively muscular man wearing golden Greek armor with an arrogant smirk. These were Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, chastity, and the moon, and Atlas, the titan of strength and endurance respectively. This time the vast majority of the campers and hunters cheered as the two combatants were named. Even Mr. D had one of those foam hands on that red Go Sis. On it that he waved unenthusiastically as he paged through his magazine from Paris. "Do you now see the futility of your actions now, little goddess?" Atlas asked in a mocking tone as he slapped away an arrow that got close to his head and began to slowly apply more pressure. Artemis didn't verbally respond. Instead she broke the blade lock and used the momentum to slip past his guard and slash at his back, withholding a groan as her weapons barely cut into his armor. "Soon you and your little companions shall be nothing more than a memory, a really bloody memory." "Boo. Less talking, more slaughtering," an Ares voice rung out from within the crowd. He emphasized this with a grazing blow of his spear, making a long shallow cut along Artemis' arm. "Damn it, I don't have enough time. I doubt Poseidon's son can hold the sky for much longer," Artemis thought, briefly glancing behind the titan to see a boy with spiky black hair and seafoam green eyes as he struggled to literally hold the sky in the air. And then he was crushed, letting the sky fall and destroy everything miles around. The end. "Mr. D, I would appreciate if you keep those sorts of comments to yourself." The god grumbled as he went back to his apple juice a satyr poured for him. Seeing that the god was silenced, even for a moment, the trainer of heroes went back to the book. She knew that it was only a matter of minutes before the weight became too much for him and he was crushed. The goddess of the hunt was snapped out of her thoughts as she instinctually dodged out of the way of a jab that would have skewered her torso. Don't you know better than to get distracted during a fight? But of course, what would a pathetic woman know of real fighting anyway, Chiron winced as waves of anger filled the air as the female members of the crowd glared with red eyes burrowing into him as he focused on the book. The few unfortunate boys who were closest to hunters or daughters of war found themselves needing new undergarments from the anger radiating next to them. Even the daughters of love, though admittedly they were not known as fighters, were pissed at the statement made by the titan. "Oh my, did I hurt your feelings? Are you gonna cry to daddy now?" Atlas said in a mocking sad tone as he smirked at the suddenly immobile goddess. Snap, asterisk. Faster than the mighty titan could even blink, Artemis was right in front of his face with her now brightly glowing blades lodged deep into his shoulders, her face set into one of cold fury as she then proceeded to slash and hack at every bit of exposed flesh she could reach. "That's my girl," came an excited feminine voice. "Make your mother proud and show her that you're the better child than IAPETUSS boy." A sea of eyes turned towards the voice. There, standing in the archway, was a tall blonde woman who wore a silver dress that slowly transitioned into gold from the top down. Seeing who it was, Mr. D groaned and covered his eyes. "It is an honor, Lady Leto," Random Hunter number 2 said as she recognized the mother of her mistress. Whispering broke out as the name was slowly processed by the campers. The titan mother of the twins smiled. "Thank you, dear. I got a message from Hestia about some sort of story. P. Snow found it in the library we have for those who are in the infirmary," Mr. D said as he looked at Chiron, who was shuffling on his hooves nervously. "The last time the titan was at the camp was in Spain. Are you sure that you'll be safe here?" "I won't tell if you want." Mr. D thought about it. "Meh, doesn't bother me. Go sit with the brats." Smiling a smile that was similar to Apollo's and Artemis, the titan walked over to a free spot on a bench. It was a coincidence that Phoebe was next to her, shivering in a blanket. Steaming a cup of tea, Leto handed it to the girl to help her recover before making herself one to enjoy as the story went on. Gahhhh. Damn bitch. Get the fuck off me. Atlas screamed as he tried to pry the pissed goddess off his face only for his hands to get repelled with wild stabs and slashes whenever they got near. Finally having enough, he changed tactics and barreled straight through several walls and then body slamming head first into the floor, creating a moderately sized crater. Go Auntie Artie, called out Lee Fletcher for his father's sister. Don't call her that, chilled a hunter. Don't call her what, Auntie or Artie? Artemis, you should know that she hates being called that. Still haven't answered the question, Kowalski. Lee teased before ducking under a pebble that was thrown. Slowly getting back to his feet with a sneer as the wounds across his face swiftly healed shut, the general raised his weapon high to strike at the dazed goddess. Enjoy the taste of oblivion, you little by God. Atlas was cut off as a single silver arrow lodged itself into one of the still healing wounds on his hand, causing him to lose his grip on the javelin as it fell to the ground with a clatter. Grr, I was going to save you for last, my traitorous offspring, he growled out as he slowly turned towards the bow-wielding girl with a snarl. But now I am gonna rip you limb from limb, aahhg, Gaia, damn it. He howled as Artemis lodged her blades deep into his back. Wait, Zoe is his daughter. That means that she. Castor shushed his brother before he could continue his sentence. None of that, bro, it's only a story after all. Caught by surprise, he was unable to resist in time as she shoved him towards the struggling boy. Realizing what she was doing, the Titan's power flared as he tried to stop himself before it was too late. Having none of this, Artemis funneled her energy into her arms and pushed. Lady Artemis, look out. Head snapping in the direction of the two shouts, the goddess was just in time to see the blonde boy just a few feet away with his odd sword descending towards her head with a sickly yellow glow. Pulling one of her knives free, she raised it up just in time to block the blade a mere inch from her head. You shall not stop us. Olympus shall fall, the boy yelled as the glow around his sword brightened dramatically. Artemis' eyes widened dramatically as she got a good feel of the energy that the blade was giving off. K. Kronos. The Camlers shivered as a cold breeze came from nowhere from the mentioning of the Titan King's name. The fire flickered dark shades before glowing with warm colors after several seconds. Knowing how dangerous her grandfather's power could be, the goddess was about to pull her blade back when a bright light suddenly blinded everyone in the vicinity. When the light cleared, Atlas was lying face first in the ground with the sky on his back, the boy that was just in his place not too far away gasping desperately for breath, and the blonde boy stood with his blade embedded into the ground. Artemis was nowhere to be found. A frenzy of excited chatter arose from the crowd as they all come to debate about what happened to the virgin goddess. Only Mr. D, Hestia, who was tending the fire, Leto and Chiron did not join in. Giving a sharp whistle, the centaur got everyone to calm down. Meanwhile, today sucked, a short boy with spiky blonde hair, sapphire blue eyes, tanned skin, and 3 whisker-like markings on each cheek groaned as he marched into a small apartment. Kate Gardner hummed and stroked her chin. He's cute. Yay, a daughter of Athena agreed with her. Slamming the door shut behind him, he shuffled across the room and flopped into a small recliner with a tired sigh. This was Naruto Uzumaki, 12-year-old orphan, prankster king from hell. We resent that, Comner and Travis yelled out as they took badges from their pockets. These are first place prankster of the year ribbons and were the only ones with them for 3 years running. Self-declared future Hokage, and current failure of the Ninja Academy. For the second time now, he had failed the final test because he still couldn't perform a Bunshin no Jutsu, the most basic of clone techniques. Hey Malcolm, what's a Butchun or whatever it's called? Called out a child of a minor god. It's not Butchun, it's Bunshin, a Japanese word, Jack. Oh, but still, I am not Japanese, and just because I am a child of wisdom doesn't mean I know everything. Once I know, I'll tell you. Or if you were paying attention you would know it's some kinda cloning spell. Stupid jutsu, why doesn't it ever work for me? He wondered aloud. No matter how much he practiced, no matter how long he trained, that jutsu would always turn out a flop whenever he attempted the technique. The best he had ever gotten was a single dead-looking clone that would collapse immediately after forming. The worst part for him was how all the other students would laugh like crazy each time he failed, mocking and teasing him while he just stood there with a fake smile, declaring he would prove that he would be the best. He loved the attention, hell he practically lived for it, but just once he wanted someone to pay attention because they were proud of him. Several demigods and demigods frowned at the passage. It felt a little close to home with how they weren't claimed or were shunned by the gods into a falling down cabin for Hermes. A few hunters also had frowns as memories of their past before the hunt were recalled. Well, there's always tomorrow, Naruto thought with a smile as he stood back up. His apartment was small, only consisting of a living room with attached kitchenette, a bathroom, and a bedroom. It never bothered him though, it was his home and he was happy with the way it was. Right now, he was shuffling around the kitchenette, looking around for his favorite comfort food. That sounds lonely, Nico's voice ranged out as he shifted on the bench. It's better than the street. An ash-covered camper said as she cleaned dirt from her forging goggles with an oil-covered rag. Opening the cupboard, his smile turned to a frown as he saw only a single package of instant ramen sitting all by its lonesome. Grown great, have to go shopping later, Naruto grumbled as he grabbed the solitary package and set it on the counter as he got to work boiling some water. 5 minutes later, he was back in his recliner with a steaming cup of ramen in hand and a rare relaxed expression on his face as he watched a cheesy action movie on his small TV. Gently blowing on the ramen to cool it down, Naruto used a pair of disposable chopsticks to raise the noodly goodness to mouth. Eat something else or you're going to get sick, Michael Yu said with concern. Just as he was about to take his first bite though, he was blinded by a sudden flash of yellow and silver light as a sudden weight fell onto his lap. When his vision cleared, he found himself looking straight into the silver eyes of a visibly stunned unknown girl as she straddled his lap. Snickers came from the Aphrodite cabin members at the looks of the hunters seeing their mistress in a interesting posture. Pretty, was the last thing he thought before he felt a sudden jolt of pain in his neck and everything went black. Artemis looked down at the unconscious boy beneath her. She had knocked him out purely by reflex, but not before she had seen the surprise and confusion in his eyes as he looked at her. He had clearly not known who she is, so was likely not an enemy. He's lucky Lady Artemis is so merciful, Random Huntress number 1 said. Agreed, said Random Hunter number 4 through 9. That being said, where in Tartarus am I? She wondered as she looked around the small apartment with confusion. Attempting to focus her power into her senses, Artemis suddenly collapsed due to her exhaustion having caught up with her. Re-lifting herself off the blonde beneath her, the goddess equivalent of adrenaline finally wore off and she felt her numerous injuries ache. Leto took out a camera and summoned an image of the described scene and took a photo of her daughter in her unorganized clothing on the unconscious boy, much of the discomfort of the hunters. Perfect blackmail for later. Her breathing became uneven, her vision started blurring, and her entire body trembled violently as realization finally hit her. She was almost completely out of energy, only having enough to barely keep herself conscious. With this came the harsh truth. She was entirely defenseless, badly injured, and in an entirely unknown area. Not to mention doing an interesting posture on a boy, Mr. D said with interest as he laughed. He was going to ask Leto for that photo, the things he could do to make the twins not let Zeus see it. I need to get somewhere safe to regain my strength before making my way back to Olympus. She thought as she tried to climb off the boy only to collapse again. Immature snickering broke out that the hunter's glaring did little to prevent, only make worse. Yeah, how in Tartarus am I supposed to do that when I can barely move? Artemis knew she didn't have the time to waste. It probably wouldn't be long before Cronus followers sent someone or something to hunt her down while she was weakened. Think Artemis, think, she said to herself as she took a deep breath. You're wounded, exhausted, and probably being hunted, huh, so this is what my prey feel like, gah. Focus. I need somewhere to hide, somewhere to rest, somewhere nobody would think to look. Her thoughts ground to a halt as she looked down at the boy she landed on, an idea slowly forcing itself to the front of her mind. A son of Ares opened his mouth to speak only to have his sister Cassie cover it with a shake of her head. Now is not the time, bro. As a goddess, she had many abilities, most of which were linked to her respective domains. However, there was one that all gods she knew of could, but almost never did, use. Desperate times call for desperate measures, I guess, she thought with a sigh while leaning down until she was face to face with the unconscious child. No, 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 chanted Phoebe as the gears in her head clicked to what her mistress was planning. You should be honored, as you will be allowed a privilege that no man has ever had. She told him despite knowing he couldn't hear, before doing something that would make every one of her hunters have a heart attack. She kissed him. Far away on the other side of Lake Sound, early morning households jumped as shrieks of horror and joy filled the air. This is a nightmare. We must find Our Lady and prevent that boy from defiling her. By the fates, will why? Aren't you being a little melodramatic? Asked Mr. D as the hunters panicked. It's only a book. But it's the greatest gossip ever. The head of Aphrodite's cabin squealed as she forgot her name from the excitement. The moment their lips connected, however, her entire body glowed a bright silver and dispersed into particles that soaked into the boy's body. The only proof she was ever there being a few drops of golden ichor. End chapter. Chiron held up the book. I am not going to read this anymore. Boo, you can't do that. More. After a few moments he went in. Instead I will pick a cabin from a jar and they will read it. The fates will choose who will read. And that includes Mr. D, Lady Leto, satyrs, nymphs and the hunters. That way everyone gets a turn. Okay. A chorus of yes filled the air. Seeing that there was an agreement, Chiorn had a nymph go collect a fish bowl with strips of paper that had the names of all the cabins and forementioned individuals on them. Ask for the crowd. Chiron disperse them. Go eat and then reconvene here in 1 hour for more. Mr. D, no, you cannot remove your name from the bowl. Breakfast was chaos as the campers and hunters rushed to sacrifice to the gods and eat their food. It brought forth a smile to the resident god at all the madness unfolding. Apparently the story was a far larger hit than what Chiron thought would be, as multiple individuals had come up to the table begging for more sooner. It hadn't been 20 minutes and already it feels great, the god thought to himself as a platter of scrambled eggs went flying all over. He could see his aunt covering her eyes as the disaster unfolding. Ooh, there goes all the juice onto that poor gal's jacket. Cranberries are evil stains on white. The only individuals that were engaged and enjoying all the chuas around them were his sons and a daughter of Eris, of which the later was as giggly as a dog with its favorite ball. Perhaps you should see who will read now and well enjoy it as we eat, suggested Phoebe, who had taken shelter at the head table from the disaster of what was a meal. She winced as a hunter slipped on the dropped banana peel, causing her to fall face first in a Daughter of Demeter's cereal. And stop all the fun, Fido? Asked Mr. D as an Aries camper began to assail the twins of Hermes with sausages and peanut butter bombardment while the twins returned fire with boiled eggs and French bread toast. This is the most fun I've had in years. I am glad this is entertaining, but perhaps she is right, Chiron began. However, before he could go on, a random pie hit his face with a loud splat. Leto whistled and looked away as the centaur's face slowly turned towards her as filling dripped down. She hadn't had this much fun in years, and the old hero trainer was being a stick in the mud. Wasn't me. Groaning, Chiron wondered if it was too late to be with his relatives, but shivered at the memory of them being so stupid. I see, he said flatly before reaching for a napkin that wasn't being chewed on by a satyr. Once he was done cleaning his face, the trainer of heroes blew his horn to get everyone's attention. It has come to my attention that I have made a mistake in believing that we could get through breakfast without issue. Mr. Nico, please. Weapons aren't allowed here at the tables unless it's for the games. So put away that slingshot. Yes, sir, a deflated Nico said as GE set down the weapon and its load of jam he had been aiming at a daughter of Apollo who had been using the shots fired to cover her bread as a faster way than doing it herself. Can we try again later, Victoria? Sure, but let's work on your aim before we do it away, she said to the boy as she took a bite. After a few chews and a swallow, she nodded her head. It's passable at least, kiddo. Shaking his head from the exchange, Chiron reached into the bowl. No complaints from anyone if their cabin wasn't picked. And after this chapter is over, all of you will help clean up this mess. Including the hunters. I saw several of you lot being a part of the merriment of a mess. Get on with it then, Mr. D said as he stretched out his arms over his head. Let's see who the sorry person is. Lifting a piece of paper, Chiron read the name. Leto. The mother of Artemis grinned as she reached for the book. Oh goody, after finding out my daughter kissed a boy again after several hundred years and he looks like a mini Apollo. Worried looks were exchanged among the hunters as Leto began to read chapter 2. Inside what appeared to be a dimly lit sewer tunnel, a swarm of silver particles collected until they formed the familiar childlike shape of the goddess of the hunt. Panting in exhaustion, Artemis slowly took in her new surroundings. Rather grungy for a child's soul, she commented with mild concern. Maybe depression or something, wondered Castor before looking to his brother, who shrugged. Before slowly stumbling to the side of the tunnel and sitting down against the brick wall with a tired sigh, glad that the water her legs were submerged in appeared to be mostly clean. Focusing the absolute last of her strength, a light blue translucent aura formed in the air and started sinking into her body as she began gently siphoning the ambient energy all around into herself. Leto paused for a moment as Mr. D choked on his drink. Something wrong? Nothing, he said as he waved her off. Nifty fact. All living things had a soul, and that soul was practically a bundle of pure energy condensed into one spot. If one knew how and had the means to do so, they could harness this power in a variety of ways. In this case, Artemis was cautiously draining a small amount of this energy at a continuous rate from the boy to restore her own power as she rested. This was why other gods and goddesses never used this ability, as they found the idea of needing a mere mortal's power insulting and or blasphemous. And if what the letter said was true, old evil Gramps might be doing the same thing to restore himself. Worried Mr. D, sharing a look with Chiron, the duo recalled during the summer when Watson returned from the Sea of Monsters and told them about that sarcophagus. Imagine her surprise though when she was met with the veritable sea of energy emanating from the boy. Just my luck, a demigod, she thought. That was the only explanation she could think of for how a mere child had so much raw power overflowing from him. Please let it not be a son of Zeus, moaned Chiron as he had enough issues with Talia and Percy. A daughter of Hermes perked up from her meal. One of ours maybe. Hermes. He could be Apollo's or Athena's, said Random Hunter 2. She went on, I hope not one of Apollo's. He would not stop bugging Lady Artemis if one of his sons saved her. Oi, shouted out a son of Aphrodite. Let her read so we can find out. What was odd, however, was she couldn't tell whose child he was, something she could do almost instinctually due to her being the goddess of the hunt, but simply chalked it up to her present state of fatigue. Deeming it not important for the time being, Artemis finally allowed her eyes to close as she fell asleep for the first time in 300 years. Mr. D blinked as all eyes were on him. What? We sleep too, if that's what you want to call it. Because of that, she missed both the aura around her gaining slight flecks of reddish purple and how a series of black lines started forming on the walls, pulsing with a vibrant blue light. Elsewhere in the sewer, soulscape. The lines kept forming until they reached an unimaginably massive gateway. It was at least 4 stories tall and half as wide, and on the middle bars where the gate would open was a single piece of paper with the kanji for seal written on it. Transitioning to the floor, the lines shot toward these bars and rapidly curled up until they reached the paper. When they made contact, the paper started glowing the same color before it gave off a sudden burst of light. When it cleared, it revealed a beautiful woman with vibrant red hair that reached her waist, violet eyes, and wearing a green dress with white collar and short sleeves. She looked around the area in apparent confusion until they settled on the glowing lines. In less than a second, her confusion turned to rage, her hair rising into the air in 9 waving bunches as massive golden chains emerged from her back and shot down the tunnel the lines originated from. Okay, then he's a son of Hecate then. Mr. D yawned out. Chiron hummed as he looked at the illusion that appeared that Leto made to show the woman. Are you sure? I don't recall her having red hair. Blah. Fine, you're right. Might be any one of the female goddess. Back with Artemis. The goddess of the moon was awoken from her slumber as several golden chains suddenly wrapped themselves around her. Surprised, Artemis had no chance to try and break free before she was repeatedly bashed into the floor and walls until she lost consciousness again. The Ares campers snickered as they heard the passage Leto read. Their father would love hearing about that. Unknown amount of time later. Artemis' eyes slowly flickered open as she sat up with a groan. Sitting up from the shallow water she was laying in, she winced from a strong jolt of pain that shot through her skull. On reflex, she started to reach up with one hand to rub her head. Clatter, only to freeze as she saw the golden metal chain now bound to her wrist. That looks like the chains Dad made to trap Zeus, said a child of Hephaestus. I thought they were lost. What in Tartarus? She mentally shouted as she looked herself over and found similar bindings on her other wrist, both her ankles, her waist, and around her neck. Hunters were quivering with rage at the mentioning of their lady trapped like an animal, again. After all, wasn't there a quest to save her, and here they were, listening to the mother of their lady read out Loof. She was chained inside a boy's head or mindscape. To calm themselves they went back to their meals to try not to do anything irrational. Following the chains with her eyes, she was just in time to see a red-headed woman as she finished wrapping the ends of the chains around the bars of a massive gate in an extremely complex pattern. When she finished, the chains gained a slight blue and red aura before returning to normal. Turning around, the redhead's violet eyes locked with hers before a vicious grin crossed her lips. Well, look who's finally awake, she said in a mocking tone as she slowly approached the restrained goddess while loudly cracking her knuckles. Now little miss, she grabbed Artemis by the collar and hoisted her to eye level. And yet she says she is a goddess. More like a daddy's girl who loves cookies, mocked Mr. D before he lazily blocked several silver arrows. Lady Artemis is not Phoebe began before being cut off by Mr. D. Hestia's cooking and her wishes to Dad. Leto nodded. She does love cookies. Not as much as my cooking, but a parent's meal made from love is the best. By the sacrificial fire, a small child-like figure smiled at Leto's words. While I'd love nothing more than to pummel you until you answer my questions, such as what the hell you're doing inside my son's mind, I don't have that kind of time. As if to prove her point, her body began flickering out of existence for a few moments before stabilizing. But given how you were sucking up Naru-chan's chakra like a leech, I can guess you aren't here for good reasons. Artemis tried to speak but was unable to as the woman's grip tightened drastically around her neck. Not only that, thanks to you I won't ever be able to see my baby boy once he's older. And that really pisses me off, Titiebane. Sonata goddess, Malcolm said as he blinked, his mind racing with new questions based on the new information. Nico, however, was not as interested in the campers' and hunters' curiosity to Naruto's possible parentage as he was with his drink. Well, he was interested in one thing entirely different in the passage. What's chakra? Something to do with energy in the body combined with the soul. Said Random Huntess number 6. I read something about it being in India and other Asian cultures, I think. All I want is that woman to let her go, Kowalski said with a huff. All Artemis could do was choke out incoherent noises as she grasped desperately at her throat, her face beginning to pale. But given that I can't kill you, and trust me I tried many times while you were out cold. If she did, Artemis would never hear the end of it from Ares. Commented Lee before waving his hand to get more of his favorite eggs. Sunny side up. I won't let her, Mr. D admitted without shame. I did the next best thing. The redhead explained as her form started flickering at a much more rapid pace. I hope you like it here, cause you're going to be staying for a long time. As soon as she finished speaking, the woman faded away completely, allowing Artemis to fall back to the ground with a splash. For several minutes, all she could do was lay there with her hands at her throat as she desperately gasped for breath. When she finally did recover, the goddess slowly stood up on slightly shaky legs as her restraints jingled loudly. Looking down at said restraints, a look of anger crossed her face as she scoffed. I may be weakened, but did that woman really think mere chains would hold a goddess? She asked rhetorically as she started to pull at the chains with her godly strength. ZZZZZZTGYYAAAAAH. She collapsed back to the ground in agony as the arrangement of chains lit up like a Christmas tree with red and blue electricity coursed up the bindings and into her body. Artemis writhed around in the water as the volts kept flooding through her for several seconds before tapering out. This left her on the ground gasping, again. Just like old Smith's chains. Must have absorbed some of Dad's energy and now it's electrifying, thought Mr. D as he took a sip. Leto had a worried look on her face at the knowledge her baby girl was stuck. But she pressed on with the story regardless. I guess those mere chains are more problematic than you thought, huh, goddess? A booming voice called out, saying goddess in a mocking tone. Turning her head towards the source, the goddess of the hunt's eyes widened dramatically as she saw the massive creature on the other side of the bars. Please let it not be another issue we'll have to worry about, Travis said. It was a giant fox with blood-red fur, equally red slit-pupilled eyes, black markings around its eyes and mouth, and 9 long tails. A deep growl emanated from its throat, causing the whole sewer to shake. The whole thing would have been more intimidating though if nearly every inch of the fox wasn't restrained by chains many times larger than the ones on her. The body was held to the floor while its tails were pinned to the walls of the cage. A Kyuubi, said a daughter of Aphrodite in awe. Seeing the looks around her she shrugged. I had to do a report on mythology for Japan once. The kitsune is a popular figure in their myths. Not a myth, whispered a veteran hunter who was overheard only by those closest to her. Onde eakspay of ye other ye ologies mythe arahe oracle. Said random hunter number 1. You one ethe ale, ityay event spray another ye earled way arwe omfre eking re alye of ye ivilization k. What are you? Artemis asked in mild fright as she scurried away from the cage. She could feel the raw power rolling off it and it was comparable to the mighty Typhon himself. You were saying bro, Travis glared at his brother as he took a bite of toast. Me, I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, strongest of the Biju and pure hate incarnate. That is all you need to know ninja. It said blandly before seemingly going to sleep. Seeing as she probably wasn't going to get anything other than that, Artemis decided not to press her luck and chose to focus on gathering her strength instead. Placing herself as far as possible from the Kyuubi, she found a small, raised platform that stuck out of the shin-high water that she laid down on. Can goddesses even get hypothermia? Wondered Mark, causing the Athena children to pause with their eat and wonder if Ares was smarter than he looked. Examining her restraints, she noticed as a trace amount of the red energy was seeping from them into herself. While this was giving her strength, she also felt a similar amount of her own power being drained from herself and released into the surrounding area, represented by a soft silver glow. Sighing in frustration, Artemis attempted to get as comfortable as she could on the slab of stone with the metallic bindings on her. Setting her head down, she drifted back into an uneasy slumber. Morning, Naruto's apartment. Naruto woke up with a yawn, rubbing his eyes tiredly as he sat up in his recliner with mild confusion. What am I doing out here? He wondered aloud, rubbing the sleep out of one eye as he looked around his living room before spotting the still turned on television as it played static. Oh, must have dozed off. If only he recalled his first kiss. Leto sighed disappointed. I could have asked how was my daughter as a kisser. Lady Leto, Chiron said slowly. Her handmaidens would probably prefer this than that. Spoilt sport. With that mystery solved, he stood and stretched the kinks out of his muscles before throwing away the now inedible cup of ramen with a sad look. Looking up at the clock hanging on the wall, he found it to be 8:27 in the morning. Well, time for a shower, then shopping, he thought with a grimace. At least I don't have to worry about school for a few weeks. Yon, what is all this racket? Naruto yelped as he heard the unfamiliar voice ring through his head. Who said that? He demanded as his eyes darted all over the room. Your conscience named Jiminy Cricket, called out a young member of the campers, causing many to sport a grin. Stop with that yelling, boy, I already have a headache as it is. The voice said in an irritated tone. The hangover. Apollo was an ass to invent it because all his worshippers stayed too long to party with me. Mr. D's face had a sad tint to it as it ruined all the fun of drinking. Hey, don't tell me what to do, Naruto yelled as he continued to search all over the place for the source of the voice. Who are you? Where are you? What are you doing in my home? He demanded. You can stop looking, you won't find me anywhere, boy. And I said stop yelling. The voice yelled back, making Naruto cringe as the sound echoed through his skull. CNF that you broke into his home, knocked him out and then was stealing his life force to recharge, you should NT complain. Leto muttered under her breath, scolding her daughter. Fine, but at least answer my questions. And stop calling me boy. My name's Naruto Uzumaki and you better remember it, Tobeo. Mindscape. Artemis' eyebrow twitched as she saw everything Naruto saw thanks to a large hologram-like screen floating in front of her. So that woman really was his mother, she thought as her hand reflexively went to her still bruised throat. Dad would love her, a child of Apollo said with a smile. She could be an Amazon mom. One of the hunters said as she poked at her remaining scrambled eggs. They're very proud of their children and are rather protective. Reality. All right then boy. Naruto grit his teeth, my name is Artemis. As for where I am, here's a hint, I know exactly what you're thinking. What I am thinking. But that impossible unless you were in my head. Wait a minute, Naruto's eyes widened as it hit him. You're in my head. Exactly, the now named Artemis stated bluntly. Why are you in my head? Get out, Naruto yelled while gripping his head. Trust me, I would love to do exactly that but I can't. Why not? Because it would require the smith to use a chisel and hammer to split your head. Old Zappy would tell you that. What did I just tell you about yelling? Naruto's jaw snapped shut just as he was about to yell again when he heard the dangerous tone in Artemis' voice. Also think when you're talking to me, otherwise others are going to think you're going crazy. Well, last I checked, hearing voices inside your head was a pretty sure sign of someone going crazy. Naruto thought back in a snarky tone. He's not wrong sis, I doubt she can hear you sir. Whatever you say phony, touché, but still, I highly doubt you want people noticing so. Not unless you want a one-way venture to an insane asylum. Artemis said, causing Naruto to grumble in reluctant agreement. Alright, you do have a point there, great, I am agreeing with the voice in my head. Naruto groaned as he collapsed back into his chair. Congratulations Naruto, you have officially gone crazy. End chapter. Well that was a nice chapter. Setting down the book Leto yawned. So who is next Chiron? I hope one of my grandkids. Chiron checked the bowl. Athena's cabin. But after everything is cleared up here and chores are done, pick a member of your cabin to read and everyone met at the burp. Mr. D had the decency to look sheepish. What? Not my fault he couldn't handle a few extra cans. The satyr who burped had his face hidden by a platter from the embarrassment at the comment from the god. Wasn't his fault he loved spiced tin cans. Campers, hunters, dismissed. What are you doing? Chiron asked the wine god who was tapping away on a cell phone. The two primary immortals of Camp Half-Blood were waiting for the campers to come and take their seats. Only Athena's children were nearby in deep argument over which of their members would read. Leto was over by the hearth chattering with Hestia discussing something that the centaur didn't want to eavesdrop. Mr. D looked up from his cell before dropping his gaze back down. Answering reviews. Reviews? What reviews? Reviews for what? For the reading of course. Mr. D yawned as he texted. Mortals love a good story so I am positive that this will garner lots of reviews here. For instance someone by the name of Habu 2010 said nice, please continue I was hoping Kushina will appear. I have no idea who this Kushina is or how she relates to the story. I didn't read the book before after all so I have no idea. Looking over at the screen Chiron read a review that was posted. Sagely Taoist said yippee another chapter and it is awesome as always, I hope the other gods and goddess will be joining soon, it would be hilarious to see their reaction. D. Are you sure that it was the story you're posting? Mostly. I've also added in our reactions so that it feels more funny. It's a trend that mortals are doing and it's a great troll. Mr. Rio Skyron agrees with me. Yes but how will others? I am not going to answer. I am not Apollo with his sight. Now let's see what else they said. Perseus D. Uzumaki. Think he's related to that Naruto character. Maybe it's a common surname or just he likes the sound of it. Chiron pondered as he read the review. Or a child of Sunspot. Listen to this, are the original chapters this short or are you cutting them down? If the former then wow I remember them being a little longer. If that's not Apollo's farsight ability then I am a character in a story. And myths do not count. Whoever it is should know we're reading it from the book. Mr. D please don't upset the mortals. They are trying to jeer a better feeling of the story. Well he should be happy that the hunters didn't read the next part. Oh he enjoyed the comparison between the ladies' chains and the ones made by my brother. Yes we all enjoyed it very much. Groaning Chiron settled in to wait for the third chapter. He didn't have to wait long as Malcolm won the Athena cabin discussion to decide who would amongst their number. The demigod would get once Mr. D was done answering the reviews from the mortals as the god was being rather touchy on the matter. Mr. D we're all waiting on you. Oh fine. There are more I'll have to look over once I post this chatter anyway. And now, 1 year later. Beep, 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 the asterisk click. Boom, snickered an Aries camper under her breath. A lightly tanned arm shot out from under a bundle of blankets and smacked the beeping alarm clock. A soft groan replaced the irritating noise as Naruto's head partially emerged from the mess with half-lidded eyes to glare at the glowing numbers on the clock. He stared at it for a full minute before collapsing back onto his bed. Udge, 5 more minutes. I know, whined a tired-looking demigod who was rubbing his eyes. Why can't we get those 5 minutes anyway? Don't bother trying, Naruto, you need to be on time for the finals today. Artemis' voice called within his mind, making Naruto groan again. Now get up. The hunters snickered as they each individually recalled Artemis getting them to wake up after a long day or night's work. All right, I am up, Artie Nichan. That shut up and killed the amusement of the hunters. However, it made Leto let out a coo of endearment to the boy. Oh, he called her big sister. How sweet. Now if only Apollo could do so. Naruto grumbled as he finally climbed out of bed. With the blankets no longer covering him and the fact he was only wearing a pair of boxer shorts, you could now see a few differences in his appearance. He was about an inch or so taller, his cheeks were a little less chubby, and his musculature was more toned and slimmer looking. Definitely more mature yet slightly feminine. Noted an Athena camper. Must be a side effect of Artemis being inside him. A child of Aphrodite narrowed her eyes in thought. Would her present in him make him her child? Or at least take on more of her characteristics and skills? The hunters all paled along with Mr. D and Chiron. However, the most noticeable changes would be to his hair and eyes. The former was from the streaks of auburn cropping out here and there, and the latter due to the multitude of silvery flecks now in them, giving his eyes a literal sparkle effect when in direct light. That's pretty, Phoebe said as imagined what it would look like in real life. If only. If only what, dear? Asked Leto with a grin as she stood up next to the hearth. Would it be you wish to see what is going on as well? Hear it from the speaker. Phoebe blinked in surprise. Leto grinned brightly as she looked at the hunter. Well, don't worry, as well you can. Ta-da. With a wave of her hand, the flames in the hearth jumped up higher and shifted in colors in a frenzy. Slowly all eyes watched as an image appeared in the flames. A blond boy appeared on his bed, yawning with eyes glittering. Ooh, came a chorus of voices. Stretching his arms with a yawn, Naruto slowly stumbled out of his room and into his living room, where he was greeted with the sight of a fair-skinned, black-haired, black-eyed color not bruise. Rare and pretty, a satyr said with a hum and sigh. He often found the children of Aphrodite over the last 3 decades as a seeker. He had picked up a few things to get their attention and not upset them over not looking fashionable. Woman wearing a bluish-black kimono with white trim reading a small scroll. She was sitting on one side of a new-looking loveseat, sat in front of television along with an equally new coffee table that had 2 plates of food sat on it. Pollux took a sip of cola. Very sitcom, a mix of Western and Japanese styles. Dear old dad would know a lot about sitcoms. I swear Apollo pitched the Brady Butch based on Our Lives on MT. Olympus, Mr. D noted with an eye roll. I thought it was based on the camp. Random Hunter number 2 said. You say something. Upon seeing her, Naruto instantly perked up before quickly rushing over and hugging the woman tightly around the waist. Morning, Shizune Nichan, he said excitedly as the now-named Shizune looked down at him with a smile while she rolled up her scroll and returned the affection. Morning, Naruto, how are you and your roommate doing today? She asked somewhat hesitantly after they separated while pointing towards her own head. He's not crazy and I should know, grumbled Mr. D. All he has is a giant fox and a goddess in there. Lord Dionysus, a nymph, slowly spoke as to choose her words carefully not to offend the god. Perhaps that is why. Humph. As soon as the words left her lips, Naruto's eye color suddenly shifted, changing to almost pure silver with flecks of blue. I do have a name, Shizune, I'd appreciate if you'd use it. Artemis' soft but strong voice came out of Naruto's mouth. It's creepy to hear her voice coming out of a boy's mouth. A creeper out, Kowalski uttered. Leto snickered. How do you think the story of Peter Pan came from? Sorry, Artemis, still getting used to all of this. Yep, she knew about Naruto's other soul Rumi. How, you may ask? Well, that would be for the same reason she's in Konoha and not wandering around the elemental nations with Tsunade, the legendary sucker Senju. Malcolm double-checked his eyesight. Why does this chapter seem to think I know why this is important? Magic, Chiron said lamely. But sir, it's not magic. That, or do you really want to interrupt the story for a minor detail? With that, the son of Athena went on as the fames went on, showing the scene being played. You see, it turns out housing the goddess of the moon inside your soul while some of her power is gradually being dispersed into your body has a few side effects. The hair and eyes were again the most obvious of them, but there were more less obvious but problematic issues. His muscle development was becoming more lean and compact, thus giving him a slightly feminine figure. Didn't we mention or at least talk about this a few minutes ago? A daughter of Demeter noted. Yep, came a reply from a hunter. And it was now a bit harder for Naruto to read as the kanji in books or scrolls would seem to become slight distorted for him. He's becoming a demigod child of Artemis. I am gonna be a grandmother. Leto cheered loudly, causing the Stymphalian birds in the forest to flee. Looking around, she blinked before looking at the children of Apollo. I do care for you all. We understand, Lady Leto, a depressed son of Apollo said with a frown. Dyslexia and kanji together sounds horrible, said one of Malcolm's half-sisters. The most prominent issue though was how the blonde redhead, auburn as a reddish-brown, now felt completely restless and energetic at night, making it impossible for him to sleep no matter how hard he tried. Random hunter number 8, who was the only hunter still paying attention, shivered. Worse hangover, staying awake during the night and being asleep when Apollo is in the sky. It got so bad that it was only a matter of time that it drew attention, specifically from Naruto's favorite teacher Iruka. Dolphin, I love them and I can't believe old Saltbeard gets them in his court. Whined the god of wine. 10 months ago, Shinobi Ninja Academy. Iruka was a young man with darkly tanned skin, brown hair, and a long horizontal scar going across his nose. He was also a very dedicated teacher who cared deeply for the well-being of his students, especially given the profession they were training for. It was because of this that he didn't tolerate slacking off of goofing around from his students while they were in his class. Chiron smiled. As a fellow educator, I can say I like him. So when he saw the trouble student, class clown, and resident prankster of his class. Not us, chimed the Hermes cabin twins heads as one. Travis went on, but we would love to meet him. Naruto, with his face planted firmly against his desk while softly snoring during his lessons, again. He was understandably a bit upset. Like every child of Hypnos. Groaned the centaur. But we like sleeping, came a call in the group of demigods. With a vein bulging on his forehead, he marched across the classroom while ignoring his other students whispering and snickering at the blonde's soon-to-be misfortune. When he got to Naruto's desk, he slammed his fist onto the boy's desk, making him shoot back up with a start. Naruto, how many times have I told you not to sleep in class? You need to take this seriously. Iruka started his scolding strong but trailed off near the end as he got a good look at Naruto's face. Dark bags sat under his eyes, his face was pale, and overall looked ready to pass out again any second. Sorry Iruka-sensei, I am just having some trouble getting enough, thump just like that. Poor Naruto. Kuda, daughter of love. Your complexion is going to suffer the longer you go without rest. Present. At first Iruka had thought Naruto had just been overworking himself and had told him off later for doing so at the nurse's office, despite the blonde claiming otherwise. It wasn't until a few days after that incident that he started to believe his student when he saw Naruto not only still sluggish and exhausted in class but stopped pretty much everything he usually did. No pranks. Connor whimpered. No ditching class. Travis paled. No hanging out with Kiba, Shikamaru, or Choji. His seemingly endless amounts of energy he was known for just seemed to be gone. The final nail in the coffin was when he missed going to Ichiraku's when they had a completely free ramen eating contest. Ew, who would eat that? A dryad said as she shivered. A nymph shrugged her shoulders. People from Japan or college kids. Some of my relatives out west had some before. It's still gross. After that, Iruka wasted no time bringing the matter to the Hokage, Fire Shadow Hiruzen, the leader of Konohagakure village hidden in the leaves and Naruto's grandfather figure. Not even an hour later and Naruto found himself in a hospital room as several tests were being done on him to figure out what was wrong. They even had some weird guy with long white hair and red marks on his face examine his stomach for several minutes while he channeled chakra for some reason. What's with the clown? Asked a rather fat satyr. No idea, said one of the cleaning harpies. She had come to listen into the story and was happily munching on drumsticks dipped in hot sauce. So what the story? After several days of exams, questions, and observation, not only had they not been able to figure out what was wrong, but that is when they started noticing all the other little changes had been going through. With the case only getting more complex as time passed, and in his worry for his surrogate grandson's health, Hiruzen called the one person who could possibly find out the problem to come back to the village, one Tsunade Senju, also known as the world's best medical nin. Definitely one of Apollo's then. Oh, says here her grandfather was one Hashirama Senju, one of the founders of the village, and her grandmother was Mito Uzumaki. Not a demigod. So, is she related to Naruto? Asked random hunter number 1. No idea other than at least some kinda cousin if not some aunt. The big problem with that, Tsunade hated Konoha since her brother and lover both died while serving the village as shinobi. After their deaths, she had left with her lover's niece Shizune while vowing never to set foot in the place again. However, Hiruzen wasn't known as the professor for nothing and had quickly found a way to force her back, by striking her where it hurts the most for gamblers. Like how Zeus' punishment for you was taking away wine. Don't make me hurt you, Chiron. 8.5 months ago, Hokage's office. Hiruzen sat calmly in his office smoking a pipe, dressed in the official Hokage attire with a relaxed expression on his wrinkled face as he stared expectantly at the door. He didn't even flinch when said door suddenly exploded into pieces of wooden shrapnel that went flying, embedding themselves several inches into the walls, floor, ceiling, and furniture while somehow completely missing him. Standing where the poor innocent carved chunk of oak used to be was a tall blonde woman with sharp brown eyes locked in a glare, pale skin, a diamond tattoo on her forehead. Malcolm paused and looked at Chiron uneasy. Do I have to say the next part? Yes. The demigod then turned to the hunters. Promise not to shoot me. If you don't start reading, Phoebe said slowly. Then we might. Whatever it is, we know that you're just the reader, not the author. Gulping, he went on with sweat drops forming on his brow. And a ridiculously large bust, Bo chicka bow wow. Goddammit Tucker, this is the wrong story. Dude, as long as there are hot ladies around, I am always in the right story. Facepalm. Perverted author, probably. Or not so phonic, Mr. D said as he ogled the woman. Damn, those are huge. She wore a short gray kimono with blue edging, short blue pants, and a long green jacket with the kanji for gamble inside a red circle on the back. Standing behind her with a nervous and apologetic expression was none other than Shizune, still wearing the same outfit, only now holding a small pig in her arms. Bacon for later, young. Mark liked his lips at the sweet taste of crispy made bacon. Hiruzen. The woman yelled as she literally stomped into the office with the force of an elephant, shaking the whole building and leaving spider web cracks under each foot. Why the hell did you freeze up my bank accounts and force me to come back here? She demanded, slamming her hands so hard against his desk that if it wasn't for the reinforcement seals on it, the whole thing would have been turned to splinters. Strong, noted Leto with a nod. Might be strong enough to challenge him when he was mortal. I promise it is important, Hiruzen said in a calm, even tone, not once faltering under the wrath of his old student. There is an odd medical case that needs your expertise to figure you. No, Tsunade cut him off. There is no way I am helping this Kami-forsaken village after all that it has taken from me. Hiruzen sighed at that while rubbing his forehead in annoyance. Tsunade, it has been almost 30 years since Dan and Naoki's deaths, you need to. Mr. D chucked his tongue. Okay, not the smartest thing you can do, Gramps. He was cut off once again, this time from a fist heading towards his face. Don't you dare say they're ga. Tsunade had started to yell again, only for her to be cut off this time when Hiruzen stopped the punch cold by catching her wrist. Then, with blinding speed, the seemingly harmless old man struck her several times in the torso with Hyuga-like precision and speed using his free hand. Stunned and gasping for breath, the blonde woman was left completely defenseless to the chop against her forehead that sent her stumbling back until she fell into a chair that appeared behind her in a puff of smoke. I won't fight him, called Put, a child of Ares. Please, you'll be bested faster than her, came the response of a hunter. Still do. Shut up. Stay seated. Listen, Hiruzen said sternly once she recovered, fixing Tsunade with a fierce glare and wave of killing intent that froze her in place. Nico opened his mouth with a wow. That old man was someone he wanted to become. He was like an elderly experienced superhero. As I was saying, it has been nearly 30 years since their deaths. You've had more than enough time to mourn and move on, yet instead you are insistent on spitting on their memory with your self-destructive lifestyle. Don't even bother denying it, you know that is exactly what you're doing. He said, his glare hardening even further when his student tried to argue back. Deja vu with Apollo having to become a shepherd. Chiron recalled that conversation with the king of the Gids when he was looking for healing aid with one of his early students. The idiot decided to see what would happen if you. I was planning on just having you do this case and then be on your way, but your reaction at even mentioning it has changed that. It was true, all he wanted was her to find out what was wrong with Naruto and then she could leave. However, looking at his former student sitting before him, the old man decided it was finally time to put his foot down on another matter while she was here. From now on, you are considered an active kunoichi and your seinen travel rights are hereby revoked. You will also be required to go see a therapist on a regularity of at least once every 2 weeks. I hate therapy. Ruins all the fun, Mr. D grumbled as he ate a slice of cake. What's the point of being the god of madness if no one goes crazy? If you try to leave for anything other than an authorized mission, I will not only have the Senju accounts liquidated and the money dispersed to the various clans of the village, but also have you marked as a missing nin. What? You can't do that, Tsunade screamed in horror as she stood up from her seat, only to get nailed right on her tattoo with a paperweight that knocked her right back down. May, you should have thrown the book, a son of the smith said as he cleaned his wrench. I am the Hokage, my word is law, Hiruzen stated bluntly. Or else you will face the might of my thunderbolts. Laughter over the sentence Nico said by accident make its way around the fire. Plenty of nature spirits and the immortals in the crowd found it rather on point with the king of the gods' behavior at times. Making the woman growl angrily and grit her teeth, but she didn't move from her seat. Now onto the case you so quickly rejected. Opening one of the drawers of his desk, the old man pulled out a manila envelope that he then tossed over to still-pissed woman. Tsunade caught it by reflex, holding it in the air for a few seconds before reluctantly bringing it closer and opening it. Pulling out the small stack of paper inside, she quickly glanced over the contents of the first page before her eyebrow started twitching. An insomnia case. All of this over a fucking kid having trouble sleeping? She asked through clenched teeth. What kinda doctor are you? Read the case file, yelled out Fletcher. At first glance that is what it would seem, yes, Hiruzen said, but I'd suggest you keep reading before allowing that temper of yours to get any hotter. Knowing there was no point in arguing at this point, Tsunade simply grumbled loudly while flipping the page. Her griping continued for a whole of 10 seconds after that before slowly tapering off as her eyes darted over the piece of processed wood. By the time she was finished with the third page, her anger had seemingly completely dissipated as she became completely focused on what was written with a raised brow while waving her apprentice over. An Uzumaki. Go figure, they always have the weird conditions, better yet a Jinchuriki. A foreign silver-colored chakra presence not from the Kyuubi, which according to the pervert is under even heavier lockdown than it used to be somehow. Shifting body tone, changing eye and hair color, an unusual brain activity. Okay, I'll admit, I am interested. At least she's not some kind of pervert or a male, a hunter slowly said as she stretched out on the bench. Present. After being effectively coerced into staying, Tsunade spent a day going over the various notes and test results before actually meeting with Naruto and doing some tests herself. Unfortunately, since she was still in a very bad mood from being forced to stay, she ended up making a snarky comment about the Hokage position while in the boy's presence. Given how Naruto aspired to be in said position, this went about as well as you could imagine. Try us. Came a dry response from the audience to the book. 8.5 months ago, hospital. It was the middle of the night and Tsunade was standing over Naruto's bed with a clipboard, writing down some notes from the results of a jutsu shed just used to scan the activity and chakra flow to his brain. The Hokage position is a fool's job, for those looking for an early grave. The busty blonde said pessimistically after hearing the boy talk about how he would become the leader of the village. Take that back, you stupid hag, Naruto shouted, looking and feeling a lot better now that he'd been able to get some sleep during the day. Looking down at him with a smug smirk, Tsunade leaned forward until she was face to face with the boy and said 2 words. Make me. Chiron groaned and covered his eyes. Tell me, why do mortals keep asking that? It's like you L9T have a death wish. Damn it, where the hell is room 315 again? Shizune asked herself as she wandered through the hospital with a large cup of coffee in hand. She'd been sent to fetch one by Tsunade and had ended up getting turned around in the large building. Blame Athena, she wanted to make sure Hermes would have less time to make pranks. Answered Leto with a scowl. It had even caused the Titan grief with how layouts were made to get one lost. After several more minutes of searching, she finally gave up and stopped a nearby nurse to ask for directions. Oh, you want that boy's room? The nurse, an elderly woman with fair skin but graying brown hair, asked with a disgusted expression, like she just heard or saw something disgusting. Down that hall, take a left, 5th door to the left. She said quickly before hurrying away. The Apollo kids frowned and one even called out, Oi, that's no way to treat a patient lady. Having been informed of her teacher's patient's other condition, Shizune had a good idea behind why the woman acted like that and had to restrain the urge to punch her. Instead she just followed the directions she was given and soon arrived at the room she wanted. Upon entering though, the cup in Shizune's grip slipped free and fell to the floor with a small crash as the raven-haired woman stared at the scene before her in shock. AAAGH. Get the fuck off me, you little fucking bastard. Tsunade screamed, attempting to pry Naruto off of her chest while the boy gave her a double purple nurple. A moment of silence. To a brave man who did it, to a woman with big old T. Finish that sentence, boy, and you'll learn to sing higher than your counterparts in the all-boy choir next week. Hissed to Hunter. After that day, when the Anbu and medical staff who witnessed this told others of what happened, Naruto was unanimously declared the bravest person in all of Konoha. How Our Lady didn't stop him I don't know. Phoebe wondered. Present. Once she managed to separate the two, and prevent Tsunade from turning her patient into a bloody smear. Thank you for that, I want my daughter and her host safe. Leto was enjoying the show and the reading as she sipped on tea. Hestia makeup for her. Shizune introduced herself and managed to hit it off rather well with the energetic blonde. Naruto liking how Shizune was caring but also understanding, allowing him to get up and stretch his legs when he was feeling restless or simplifying things that he had trouble understanding. Meanwhile Shizune liked Naruto for his blunt honesty and straightforward attitude. Naturally, it wasn't long until Naruto saw the kind woman as the sister he always wanted. Ah, cooed the ladies of the camp. Since then, she ended up acting as the mediator between him and Tsunade whenever they were in the same room. Whenever she left them alone, the two were at each other's throats within minutes. Ares and Irene, Eris and Harmonia, Zeus and Poseidon. Listed Chiron on hid fingers. Zeus and Hades are Hades with Poseidon. Chimed in Mr. D. In the meantime, Tsunade was able to figure out what was wrong with his sleeping issue after a few weeks, along with other things. 6.5 months ago, Hokage's office. A second being also sealed inside of Naruto. Hiruzen asked Tsunade as he looked up from the report on his desk. Wow, they noticed Lady Artemis. A dryad said in surprise. A cloud nymph nodded. Could it be because of how weak she is that they can notice? That makes sense. It makes the most sense. There is no other way that foreign chakra would still be circulating in his chakra system otherwise. Tsunade said, I even had the Gaki completely isolated from anyone but myself and Shizune for an entire week just to make sure nobody was injecting the stuff into him manually. While she spoke, the blonde pulled out a specific sheet from the report for the Hokage to see. Not only did it remain consistent, the amount circulating has actually been increasing, roughly by an estimate of 0.05% every 3 weeks. Wasn't there a story about how a baby was dipped into fire by Giddis and turned into a demigod? Asked a son of Athena to Chiron. I'll have yo check my records. I may be good at my job but I still forget things. Hiruzen's brow furrowed at this as he read over the data. Is there any way to get rid of it or stop it from getting worse? He asked, only to sigh when Tsunade shook her head. Coffee, a hunter stated with a nod. Lots of coffee. Not unless you want to seal off his entire chakra network, Tsunade said sarcastically, besides at this point it's doing him more good than bad. How in Kami's name is making him unable to sleep good? Hiruzen demanded sternly. Correction, he is unable to sleep, at night, Tsunade said with a smirk, making her sensei blink in surprise. Excuse me, Tsunade's grin widened at his baffled response. It wasn't every day one surprised the shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi. You heard me, he can't sleep at night. This silver chakra has altered the brain's neural and hormonal activity for sleeping, effectively making him nocturnal. She explained, it's actually a rather easy fix, just have to prescribe him a few meds for sleep. Chiron shook his head. Now if it were so simple for Hypnos or Morpheus children. Hiruzen continued to stare at her blankly for several seconds before finally responding with a tired sigh. I am getting too old for this shit, what do we do next then? At this point, Tsunade finally lost her smug look, being replaced with a frown. Next, we find the best Yamanaka you have and have them do something really stupid. Bash him over the head, asked an Aries camper lifting his mace. Leto's response to that idea was swift. No, you honestly don't mean. That's exactly what I mean. Few hours later, hospital. Just for the record, this is by far the stupidest thing you have ever asked me to do. One Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, said as he stood inside a hospital room with Tsunade, Hiruzen, Jiraiya, white-haired man with red lines on face and a very heavily sedated Naruto. You want me to send someone into a Jinchuricus mind? Into the Kyuubi Jinchuricus mind? Bashing his head would be safer. Mr. D said when he finished his cola. Leto gasped at the younger immortal and would have chuled him if not for the fact he went on. Clearly the boy has issues 11 without Artemis inside him. More people inside his head might kill the poor lad. Or hell go insane. I don't know which I would like to see what happens but it could hinder or harm Artemis' safety. Those closest to the goddess all went white with terror from the truth in the mad god's words. Not just someone, me. Tsunade said, we need to find the source of that unknown chakra and the only way we're going to be able to that is from within the Gaki's mind where the spiritual half of the seal resides. Or at least that's what the pervert says. She finished while jabbing her thumb at Jiraiya. Phoebe summed up the thoughts of her sister hunters. Keep away from our mistress. Oi, I told you I am not a pervert. I am a super perv crack. Crash. Asterisk. Whatever you say, I just want it to be known that I think this is a very bad idea. The blonde man said, ignoring the twitching man in the wall. Such a nice lady, a smiling Leto said even as her eyes were like obsidian as she stared at the image of the strange man. While going through a quick string of hand seals and placing a hand on Tsunade and Naruto's shoulders. Meindo Bodhikoiru Tenso no Jutsu, mind-body coil transfer technique. Noted, was the last thing Tsunade heard from Hiruzen before everything went white. Mindscape, seal, Artemis sat on her little platform with a bland look as she patiently waited for her company. Just because Naruto wasn't conscious doesn't mean his senses stopped working, so she was able to hear everything that had just been discussed. Sure enough, not even a minute later Tsunade's form appeared in a small flare of blue light, facing away from the seal. The busty blonde stumbled slightly from disorientation for a few seconds until her senses stabilized and she caught herself. Once she got her bearings, Tsunade quickly started taking in her surroundings. I've heard of having your head in the gutter, but isn't this a little extreme? It's a sewer, not a gutter. And probably should NT say anything more. A son of Athena said as eyes turned towards him with annoyance. I had a similar thought when I first arrived here. The instant Artemis' voice reached the blonde's ears, Tsunade whirled around with her fists raised. Upon seeing the child-looking goddess on her stone bed with her golden bindings, the in-disguise elderly woman's eyebrow rose but her stance never wavered. Nico raised his hand. Like how Miss Artemis appears as a kid when she's old. Don't say that again, kid. The satyr closest to him warned. Who the hell are you? Would you like the long version or the short? Present. Artemis told Tsunade her full story, figuring lying would get her nowhere at that point. Sadly for her, while the medic believed the part on how she got chained to the seal, the rest was considered pure imagination. Tsunade had ended up deeming her as the result of a split personality that had fully developed into a different person, with her unique chakra being simply an unusual mixture of Naruto's and Kyuubi's. Spilt personality, my foot, muttered Mr. D as he felt his Roman self nod with agreement. On the plus side though, she was deemed not a threat and Naruto was released from the hospital with some meds to help with his sleeping issue. Though it did come with the condition that Shizune check up on the duo regularly, something Naruto was really happy about and Artemis didn't mind much. That's nice, Malcolm said before going on. That is understandable, but I would still prefer if you referred to me by my name. Artemis said plainly before Naruto's eyes reverted to normal. Blinking a few times then squinting slightly, the blonde's hand quickly rose to rub his head while an annoyed groan escaped his lips. Would you please warn me before you do that? Gives me a headache from hell when you don't. He mentally grumbled. Oh, it isn't that bad, now quit your griping and hurry up, unless you want to be late. Artemis said back, making Naruto snap to attention. Oh crap, I almost forgot, he shouted, grabbing his plate and quickly wolfing down the contents. He then ran into his room and swiftly changed into his usual outfit, only now having a pair of dagger holsters that hung empty around his waist. Rushing back out, he gave Shizune another hug before heading for the door. I'll see you later, Shizune Nichan. Naruto yelled with a wave. Of course, Ototo, don't forget the deal. Shizune called to him, getting a thumbs up from the whiskered blonde just as the door closed. Those who had to go to school during their time away from camp grumbled. Why didn't they get immortal reminders to go to school? Said deal was simply, if Naruto could do well enough on every other portion of the final ninja exam, then the third would excuse his inability to do the Bunshin no Jutsu and allow him to graduate. It was an idea proposed by Shizune herself after seeing how badly the boy struggled with chakra control thanks to his much larger than average reserves of chakra. Even with all the usual glares and dark whispers around him, Naruto didn't drop the smirk from his face as he rushed through town. He was confident he could pass this time as both Shizune and Artemis had given him tips on physical practice, and while he was still terrible at written tests, Artemis could cover for him there thanks to the mass amounts of studying she had done through Naruto while trying to figure out how to get back home. No, and did I say no? Malcolm threw the book down with disgust. That's cheating. Chiron also looked uncomfortable. As an educator, I must agree with you, Malcolm. The boy should pass or fail on his own abilities. But Artemis is renting out his head. Travis pointed out, it's only logical she pay her rent for staying there. Are you saying her lady who is a goddess should pay rent to a mortal? Snapped Random Hunter number 5. Soon the debate over the morality and ethics of having Lady Artemis help Naruto filled the theater with a chaotic chorus of voices. On one side was Chiron, the hunters and the children of Athena. The other was the children of Hermes, Apollo and Ares, with Mr. D adding his voice to counter Chiron. A small voice tried to calm the demigod's argument but was more focused on making sure the flames didn't reach out and harm anyone from the strong emotion being projected. It was a satyr who finally got everyone to calm down and convince Malcolm to finish the Chaoter, even with a few arrows to the butt by an aggravated hunter. Speaking of which, ever since she'd taken a look at a map of the elemental nations, the goddess of the hunt had the feeling she was much farther away from home than a simple boat ride could cover. This feeling was further cemented when Artemis was unable to find a single recognizable constellation in the night sky the entire year she'd been in this situation, and given she was responsible for making about 2/3 of them, that was a very big deal. You're just outside the western claim. Probably once you recover you'll find your way home easily, commented Mr. D. She knew there was the possibility of other worlds. As a goddess, the impossible for most was a very real possibility for Artemis, but never in her long life had she or any of her siblings had ever actually gone to one before. The likelihood that she was actually trapped in one of these alternate worlds only became higher and higher as each day passed as she learned more about her current surroundings. Mr. D asked a worried hunter. Nothing to worry about, she's just confused, that's all. A claim backed by his calm face made everyone relaxed. However, the god was panicking at the loss of Artemis from the plane of the gods would bring. How will his Wine County grapes survive without her to prevent wildlife from eating them? Back to topic. Naruto finally arrived at the academy with some time to spare, so he slowed his pace to walk as he entered through the main doors. Passing through the various hallways, he soon found himself inside the familiar classroom he'd been educated in for the last year. Half the seats were filled already, but with a quick glance around the room he spotted his lazy buddy Shikamaru at one of the back seats, already asleep. The child of dreams nodded in approval of this Shikamaru. Sleeping is good. Taking a seat next to him, the ponytailed boy briefly opened one eye a quarter of the way, just enough to confirm who was next to him before going back to sleep. Not long after that, Choji, a plump boy with a kind heart, and Kiba, a feral-looking boy with red tattoos on his face and a small white puppy in his arms. I like him, Mark said with grunts from his half-siblings. Arrived and took the seats on Shikamaru's other side and in front of Naruto respectively. Then just 5 minutes before class started, Sasuke, a broody angsty boy with hair shaped like a duck's ass, showed up with an irritated look. That irritation was soon explained as a group of girls followed in from behind him and repeatedly professing their love for him. The ever-dreaded fangirls, led by Ino, a pretty blonde girl, and Sakura, a smart pink-haired girl and Naruto's crush. Pink hair, girl that's not good on you, said a daughter of Aphrodite. And that Sasuke, he needs a real gal. Not you then, Connor snickered before choking as his clothes shrunk on him. As soon as he arrived, Sasuke shot across the room and took the only unoccupied space with no opening around it, which happened to be right next to Naruto. This caused the horde of hormonal girls to groan as one while slowly dispersing into their seats, with some occasionally sending glares at the whiskered boy like it was somehow his fault. Having dealt with worse all his life though, Naruto was easily able to ignore the angry looks as Iruka walked into the room and gave his usual speech before quickly passing out the written portion of the test with his assistant Mizuki. Looks like you're up Nichan, Naruto thought as his eyes switched to silver again and he raised his pen. You may start your test, now. I am done with this. Hey, who wants this next? ¿Qué quieres decir con que tiene su propio videojuego? Este es un personaje de una historia que. What's he saying? A child of Athena asked a hunter who was next to her. The hunter listened to the god before replying. It seems like a reviewer asked in Spanish if they should tell us he has his own video game saga. Oh, Mr. D, Leto slowly stated as she took the phone from the younger immortal. Perhaps you have been reading the reviews too long. But Mr. Ragnarok isn't interrupting the next chapter of the story. Leto shook her head before looking of Demeter. Miss Miranda Gardiner, would you please read the next chapter? The daughter of Demeter nodded and took the book with a small smile from Malcolm. As she did so, Leto took a peek at the reviews and got a kick from a few of them. OXXX 777, no spoilers please. We don't want to ruin anything after all. From the other side, Chapter 4, a solitary target swung through the air in an erratic pattern between several trees. It was held up by a thin almost invisible wire that lightly glinted in the sunlight. The target itself was just barely the size of a person's palm with 3 separate black and white rings. Asterisk fwoosh thump, and now had an arrow embedded deeply into it that pinned it to the tree it was tied to, just missing the bull's eye by a few centimeters. The children of Apollo and the hunters of Artemis clapped their hands in approval of the shot. A target that was moving was harder than a stationary one after all. Meanwhile, a little over 200 yards away, Naruto gave a small cheer as he lowered his arms. He was wielding a plain wooden bow that Artemis had helped him make and a quiver of arrows rested against his thigh. He was still wearing the same clothes as earlier, the only difference being a blue headband with a metal plate depicting a stylized leaf wrapped around his noggin. Don't you mean snail? Called out Travis, causing his brother to laugh. You're improving well, but you still need to work on lining up your shots faster. Artemis said, her voice stern but with a bit of pride edging it. Coming from Our Lady, that's high praise, to a boy, said Phoebe with a flat tone. Naruto just grinned brightly at that, used to her half compliments. Besides, he was still in a good mood from passing the final exam yesterday. The children of Athena all frowned at the news that he pasted. That's the understatement of the century. Remember when you first tried to teach me archery? He asked with a grin. HMPH, how could I forget? You missed your first shot by a mile and the arrow somehow ended up hitting that annoying old pervert right in the ass. Artemis said with a chuckle while Naruto burst into laughter. Grins and giggling poured out of the hunters' mouths along with the female campers and Leto at the news of his first shot. Chiron's mouth also twitched into a grin when he remembered Apollo did something simpler with a bow, only instead of hitting a mortal it was Lord Zeus when he was hitting on a nymph. Hera was very happy with the sun god that day. Oh man, Ero Sennin was so pissed about that. Thanked Kami he fell for the Oiroku no Jutsu, sexy technique. Naruto thought as the moon goddess smirk dropped and she growled lightly. Sexy technique, D wondered out loud. Why does it feel like something I want to see? Must take note. While I admit it does have its uses, I still despise that invention of yours. She said, her teeth grinding together in irritation. Truthfully, the only reason she even tolerated that jutsu was the fact that her landlord, an idiot son of Ares, spoke up, causing the hunters to aim their bows at him. Boyfriend. Never. Why, he's a friend, that's a boy, you dumb hunters. Please, not killing my campers. Chiron stated after using his horn to make sure he had the attention of the hunters. Was as dense as a diamond and tended completely miss anything perverted, or love-related in general. The daughters of Aphrodite all squawked in disbelief. Unless it was blatantly said to him. A prime example being his total obliviousness towards a certain blue-haired fellow student's infatuation with him. Speaking of which, one Hinata Hyuga, a fellow graduate of Naruto's class, slowly walked into view with a paper bag in her arms as Naruto was lining up with another target that was a bit closer. She had short bluish-black hair, pale lavender eyes that had no pupils, and a thin scar across her left cheek. Her clothes consisted of a thick baggy gray coat, a pair of dark blue pants that went 3/4 of the way down her legs, and an identical headband around her neck. "Dude, how in Tartarus doesn't he notice her?" asked one of M. Miranda's brothers. Mark agreed with the comment. "She's cute." The short blonde only noticed her arrival after had fired again and was reaching for another arrow. "Oh, hey Hinata-chan, you're early," he said exuberantly, slipping his arm through his bow so the string rested against his chest and the body against his back before pulling the girl into a one-armed hug. About a month ago, Naruto had been training in this same area when he had heard a branch breaking behind him and shot at it on reflex. It was fortunate that his aim had been off on that day, as it was Hinata who had made the noise while Stocky observing her crush. "She might be one of our sisters," a son of Aphrodite stated, causing eyes to turn towards him. "They are rather like stalkers with a boy they want." "Hush little brother or else." His shot wasn't a complete miss however and had instead ended up slicing her cheek pretty badly. Horrified with what had done, the blonde redhead had apologized profusely to the poor girl, only to freak out even more when she suddenly fainted when he got close. Not knowing what else to do, and Artemis not having any better ideas, Naruto held Hinata in a bridal carry and took her to Shizune. There were a few complications along the way. Turns out carrying an unconscious and bleeding heiress while hauling ass towards the hospital can look pretty bad out of context, but he eventually got there. Huntress numbers 308 all nodded. It was rather unusual to see. Sadly, while Shizune was easily able to treat the injury because of the delay, wasn't able to prevent it from scarring, thus making Naruto feel even worse. To make it up to the Blue Net, he told her head do whatever she wanted for a whole month. To which she promptly passed out again, only this time from a massive nosebleed. Malcolm shook his head in disbelief. "Aphrodite, Aphrodite," came the response from the crowd. "If only my boyfriend did whatever I want for a month," an unclaimed girl from Hermes' cabin said with a sign, her eyes flickering to the boy in question. After Shed calmed down a bit, Hinata accepted Naruto's offer, but so far had only made 2 requests. The first was that he had to take her out to her favorite bakery where they shared a plate of fresh cinnamon buns, and the second was that they would have lunch together every other day. "How quaint." Leto gushed at the image. "HHHH hello NNN Naruto-kun," Hinata stuttered meekly as her face turning a bright crimson and steam shot from her ears. Thankfully, after having spent almost an entire month hanging out with her crush on a regular basis, the shy girl was able to stop herself from passing out. "IIF figured TT that since WW we both G graduated, why yesterday WW we could GG go see celebrate after an EE early lunch." "Come on girl, he's not going to bite," Kat called a random camper. "Perhaps Artemis could help her with that confidence issue," a random huntress said slowly, seeing the signs the poor dear had issues assuring herself. "That sounds like an awesome idea. What do you have in mind?" Naruto asked cheerfully as he pulled away from the flustered girl and sat down against a nearby tree. "WW well, IW was T thinking T that we CC could maybe W we could GG go to T the MMM movies for a date." Hinata finished mentally as she struggled to stay awake. "Aphrodite may need to help on this one." An Athena child spoke up. By focusing on preparing the food she brought with her in the bag, thus missing when Naruto winced slightly at her suggestion. "Oh, yeah, about that. I am kinda not allowed in any of the movie theaters." He mumbled out with a sigh, his good mood diminished slightly as he accepted a cup of sweet tea and some rice balls that she offered him. "Are really?" Hinata asked in surprise, getting a slow nod in response. "Why? I am honestly not sure," Naruto said with a shrug. "Every time I've tried to go to one, the employees kick me out while saying I would cause or was causing trouble. Last time it had been how he had supposedly making too much noise during a movie, which actually would have been believable if it wasn't for the fact he hadn't even purchased a ticket yet. Theaters suck," Nico uttered before going back to his drink. Well I am SS sure it will be okay if I am WW with you," Hinata said optimistically. She was the heiress of one of the most prodigious clans of the entire village, so it was highly unlikely they would turn her down. "Alright then, if you insist," Naruto said, feeling a little uneasy at basically using Hinata's status to get something, but would go with it since it was her idea. Though that didn't stop him from pulling the girl into another one-armed hug, causing her to squeak adorably. "You know, you are such a sweet girl Hinata. I am amazed you're still single, anyone would be really lucky to have you as a girlfriend," he told her while taking a sip of his tea, completely missing as Hinata's face invented a new shade of red. "He's worse than Percy Jackson and Chase," called out a satyr. A nymph yelled out next, I got 10 on them kissing this quest. 5 on them not. Girlfriend. Is he asking me out? Hinata mentally shouted as her mind only registered the have you as a girlfriend part. Her thoughts were flooded with imaginative scenarios of her and the boy hugging her on various dates, with each one becoming more and more romantic. It quickly became too much for the poor girl and she promptly passed out with steam flooding from her head. If she's not their sister, I'll eat my pants, Connor declared to his brother. You're on. Feeling her suddenly go limp against him, Naruto looked down at Hinata with a tilted head. She should really go see a doctor about her fainting spells, he thought with a sigh, having gotten used to the brunette's habit of falling unconscious at random times. Dad's going love that case. Doctor, please help my friend, she keeps fainting every time we meet. Will said with a serious face before grinning. He might suggest to be her an arrow from Cupid. Meanwhile, inside his soul Artemis was facepalming at the utter obliviousness of her vessel. He can never be allowed to meet Aphrodite, ever. A goddess of love meeting a boy almost completely ignorant of love. Mr. D paled. Hell never be left alone. The immortals Artemis, you know how to pick them, I give him 3 days before he cracks, max. Kowalski and Leto shared a look before the Titan replied to Dionysus' comment. With Artemis there influencing him, hell be a male god of virgins. Far away a certain goddess of love felt a disturbance in the force causing her to spill her drink on her new dress. Yeah, her fellow Olympian would stop at absolutely nothing to ensure he was properly educated. Of course, she'd have to do it without her fancy tricks, as those only worked on someone who was properly aware of romantic love, a flaw Aphrodite put into her own magic so that she wouldn't accidentally affect young children. Hey, even she had standards and taboos she wouldn't cross. She's very aggressive against that kind of love, Random Hunter 2 said as she recalled a time the hunters were requested to deal with a slave market by the goddess. Anyway, back in the real world Naruto carefully stood up, making sure not to jostle Hinata and gently setting her against the tree. Once he was free, he stretched a little bit before walking over to a very battered up log that had been stuck into the ground and carved into the rough likeness of a person. A dryad whispered a prayer for the poor log along with several other nature spirits. So how are the sets going to be today? He asked while reaching to the empty holsters at his hips just as they were enveloped in a brief flash of silver light. When it cleared, he had his hands clasped around a pair of ivory handles as he drew two long, slightly curved, hooked silver blades. These were the dancing lunar blades, Artemis backup knives that Shed reluctantly allowed Naruto to use on the condition that he did exactly as she instructed while teaching him to use them. The children of Hephaestus drooled at the sight of the knives. They were tools of art. 3 sets of 200 rising diagonal slashes then well go over vital and joint strikes. When they had first started training, Artemis had tried to teach him the same way as her hunters. A dark laughter came from the hunters causing the demigods to slowly move away. They recalled their Hades-cursed training they went through, and if the boy was going to be the host for their mistress, you better believe Naruto better prove himself through the paces. This didn't last very long though Naruto lacked the natural flexibility and nimbleness that she was used to working with and ended up throwing his back out. So, she was stuck teaching him basic knife skills, archery training, and muscle memory with a few more advanced tricks Shed managed to rework. Boo, make him suffer the way we did. Phoebe called out. Yeah, where's the beehives and exploding wolf packs? Or even the cat pit? Cat pit? Mark asked in confusion. My daughter has a habit of throwing a hunter into a pit of starving cats while wrapped in sardines and tuna chunks. Leto explained to the son of Ares. She explained it as a way to prevent arrogance during a hunt. So many cats, whispered a shivering hunter who recalled her trauma when it was HWR turn. By the time Hinata awoke from her nap, Naruto had finished his workout, and after agreeing on a meet-up point, the Autumn Leaf Theater, the duo split up to get ready. Naruto headed to his place to take a bath and change, while Hinata rushed off to get advice from the only person she could think of. 20 minutes later, Yamanaka Flower Shop. You're going out on a date. One Ino Yamanaka, supposed date exert and gossip queen of Konoha, squealed as she rushed out from behind the counter she was manning and got right in a blushing Hinata's face. With who? When is it? What are you going to wear? She demanded, grabbing the shy girl by the shoulders and shaking her like a ragdoll. Another child of Aphrodite, Chiron wondered. Demeter's a better choice, Mr. D lamely said. Miranda shook her head at the idea of Ino being a sister of hers. 2AFLLSKFGLLFWRJ. Unfortunately, Hinata's natural stuttering combined with the shaking meant that every word she tried to say came out as a garbled mess. Shed only managed to get out that she was going to the movies with someone when Ino went apeshit on her. This was the sight Ino's mother, a brown-haired, brown-eyed woman wearing a forest green dress, was greeted with when she walked in from the back with a gardenia bush in her arms. Okay, she's not of theirs. How about Dad, Mr. D? Asked one of the sons of the wine god. His answer was simple and to the point. No. Giggling at her daughter's antics, Mrs. Yamanaka set the plant down in its proper place before walking over and prying the blonde off. "Ino dear, please refrain from violently shaking our customers," she said in a sickly sweet tone. "Ino's mom has to be a demigod." A small voice came from the fire. "She's like Demeter when she's amused yet conveying a warning." The Demeter children smiled at the voice's words. "Why not Hades' wife?" Nico asked. "Couldn't she be?" Miranda sent a look at the young boy, causing him to shut up. He shivered at the sight of her glare and hoped that it wasn't because of what he said. Making Ino shiver and violently nod while in her mother's grip as she was set back down behind the register. "Now could you explain to me what exactly is going on here and who this is?" "Oh, this is Hinata, she's from my class and she's going on a date today," Ino said with another squeal. Hinata meanwhile became even more flustered when Mrs. Yamanaka shifted her gaze over to her. "And let me guess, you figured with how much my daughter talks about romance she would have some good advice to help out." "Poor girl, hush poop sniffer." When the shy Hyuga slowly nodded her head, the woman smiled cheerily while grasping the girl's shoulder. "Well, since Ino is busy with her shift, I'll just have to fill in for her, but let's talk about this at my home where there aren't any eavesdropping blabbermouths," Mrs. Yamanaka said while sending a pointed look towards the innocently whistling blonde behind the counter as she led Hinata out of the shop. "I really hope this is worth it," Hinata thought worriedly. "I wonder what Naruto is doing right now. Convincing my daughter that he will be a perfect gentleman," Leto thought amused. As soon as she and Mrs. Yamanaka were out of sight, Ino immediately rushed to the door and flipped the sign from open to closed before rushing out the door. "Must find out which theaters are open today. There is no way I am missing gossip as juicy as this." Meanwhile, Naruto's apartment. "I don't get why I have to dress differently, Ardine, we're just going to watch a movie together." Naruto grumbled, shaking the water out of his hair before he put on a plain black t-shirt. "I never understood the reasoning either, but it is apparently the proper thing to do," Artemis said back, having never had to deal with or worry about the romantic does and don't herself for very obvious reasons. So, her advice was limited to the few snippets she could remember from Aphrodite and her brother Apollo constantly talking about, something she would deny afterward till the day she faded. Mr. D started crackling up with that. "Oh, please repeat that. She'll never hear the end of this once it's no she pays attention about how to date." My side. I can't stop laughing. Never in a million years did I think I'd actually be helping a male get ready for a date, especially one who still hadn't realized he was going on one. Artemis thought with a deadpan. Leto waved a hand, causing all sound to vanish in the direction of herself and Mr. D as she too began to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Never in her immortal lifetime did she think her daughter would have this talk. As for the hunters, a conflict of emotions waged across their faces. Horror, amusement, shock and disbelief all danced across their shocked bodies. Sure, she could have told him herself, but found it highly unlikely he would even believe her, and she was maybe kinda hoping to recruit the heiress as one of her hunters once she got loose from her imprisonment. With her Byakugans, the Hyuga family Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limit, 360 vision, ability to see through solid objects, and long range sight, Hinata had the potential to be one of the best archers Artemis had ever seen. 360 with that ability. I call cheating, an Ares camper yelled out. Malcolm hummed in thought at the idea of a scout with that kind of ability before taking note of what the war kid said. You're just mad because of that fart arrow. This has nothing to do with that. But the moon goddess wasn't low enough to actively sabotage the two's chance together. Bullshit, bullshit, coughed multiple older campers. So she settled for just keeping quiet and letting things play out. Besides, she was confident that Naruto's ignorance would eventually cause Hinata to give up sooner or later. Or make her fall in love worse, a hunter said in disgust. Whatever, at least it isn't some stuffy old formal kimono, Naruto said while slipping on a pair of slightly baggy orange pants with dark blue highlights. Agreed. One of the times Artemis had synced, aka willingly possessed, with Naruto was during a large festival a few months back. Shizune had been with them and had insisted that Naruto wear an appropriate attire for it. She had been tired of Naruto complaining about it and had offered to switch places just to shut him up. Not even 5 minutes later Artemis relinquished control and retreated to her more comfortable bindings, not able to stand the itching, restrictive, and stuffy outfit a second longer. Well, that answers that question. Looks like I win the bet, Chiron said before reaching for a drink. After strapping on his sandals and taking a quick glance at the clock, Naruto saw he had about half an hour before he needed to meet up with Hinata. Hey Ardine, any ideas what to do for the next 30 minutes? Perhaps you should get a gift for Hinata, Artemis suggested after a brief pause, not knowing what else to say. You are going out to celebrate graduation after all. Naruto considered this for a moment before nodding in agreement. Yeah, I could get her some cinnamon buns from her favorite bakery. Thanks Artemis Nay, he said cheerily while leaving his apartment. If he calls Artemis Ardine-chan, I'll adopt him as one of my one. Declared Leto. How about that black dragon person? Didn't see that coming, huh? Don't mention it. Seriously, don't, ever, the goddess said dully, getting a laugh from the blonde as he jogged through the streets of Konoha at a casual pace. Relax, your secret is safe with Oof. Gah. Naruto was cut off mid-thought when someone crashed into his side as he was at a cross-section. Caught off guard, he was knocked clean off his feet and set tumbling several yards across the ground before skidding to a stop on his back. Nice distance, commented Mark. Your landing sucked if you're going to be a solider. Once the shock of impact wore off and his brain caught up with what just happened, Naruto found blinking in surprise as he stared directly into the vibrant greenish-blue eyes of Ino as she straddled his lap. Huh, talk about deja vu. Artemis deadpanned, how the hell does he get into these kinds of situations? Hi Ino, Naruto said nervously as he made sure to keep his arms firmly at his sides. Oh, hey Naruto, Ino said in a dismissive tone as she quickly got back on her feet. Sorry, can't deal with your dumbness now, have to find out where Hinata's date is going to be. Naruto felt his temper flare at how casually Shed insulted him, but was immediately broken from his anger when he heard her mumble that last bit while walking away. Wait, what do you mean Hinata's date? How could she be going on a date when me and her are going to the movies in half an hour? He asked as he stood up and dusted himself off, causing Ino to freeze mid-step. What did you just say? She asked back as her head slowly turned to face him with a rusty creaking noise. Run Naruto, run away, Connor Stage shouted to warn the character. He knew that Naruto couldn't hear him but he was too into the story to care. Run while you still can. Naruto felt a sudden nervousness wash over him as Ino's gaze bore into him, like she was trying to read his thoughts just by staring at him hard enough. Me and Hinata are going to the movies, say hey. He yelled indignantly as his fellow blonde grabbed him by the collar and started dragging him off. Let me go. No way, this is the juiciest news I've heard in ages and this time I am not gonna miss out on it. Ino said as she pulled him into the closest alley and pushed him against a wall. Now tell me everything. That's also when the Athena campers get all upset when we can't do our homework on time. Connor said as he chuckled at the situation Naruto was about to be under. I know right, exclaimed his brother as he held his sides. Malcolm shook his head before turning to one of his siblings. We're not that bad, right? She hummed before shrugging. Let's see first then decide if punishment is warranted against them, again. Extra homework perhaps. Too pedestrian for them as they might steal the answers. Let's just think on it for now. Before he could relax however, he felt a sudden chill run down his spine as a shadow fell over him. Looking up, he blinked in surprise when he found himself surrounded by the girls of his class, each one glowering down at him while cracking their knuckles threateningly. Can I help you with something? Naruto asked slightly. Wait a minute, why are you starting there? We haven't even started from the beginning. Kowalski looked up from her place in the book annoyed as the god of madness along with the rest of the audience looked over at the unfortunate demigod who interrupted the hunter. The last several minutes they have been listening and commenting on the 5th chapter of From the Other Side. Why weren't you here when I started to read? Kowalski asked as she made a mental note on her place. I was, said the camper sheepishly before wincing at the looks. I had to go use the restroom and I thought that you'll. This is why back in the day people told stories instead of reading them. Mr. D complained as he wished for a drink. Sometimes the campers were more trouble than they're worth, even if 2 of them were his own. You missed the beginning so you should. Well, perhaps we should let it slide this once. Chiron quickly said, interrupting the god. After all, we've not that far in, yes. Kowalski glared at the camper before looking at the centaur with a twitching brow. We're about halfway though, so can't I finish it? Chiron was silent as he pondered the huntress's question. While the huntress had a point about then being nearly done, it was a group exercise bonding experience, so just start from the beginning. Afterwards we'll have a restroom break so there's no more problems of someone missing out. Kowalski pouted but relented to the trainer of heroes. Flipping the pages back she found beginning the chapter and began to read as the camper raced to Fonda sit amassed the glare's scent. And now, Hinata and Naruto exited the Autumn Leaf Theater, a tall building with a variety of red, orange, and yellow colors fitting the season of fall, laughing happily as they discussed the movie they watched. Ernest Goes to Ninja Academy and finished off their bucket of popcorn. Most undoubtedly a rip-off. Yeah, I know, right, but of what? It's not our reality but a book, remember, so it can't be a rip-off. Will you two sun-tanned idiots be quiet? Asked Mark, annoyed by the Apollo children. I am trying to see if I missed something last time though. And I don't need another one of your conspiracy theories irritating me throughout. Like Hinata had expected, despite their intense dislike for her blonde crush, the majority of the staff for the theater immediately backed off from their attempts to kick him out when she explained that he was with her. Dionysus signed contentedly as he remembered a certain movie Scarlet he had introduced to the big leagues during an early Hollywood event. She was a nobody then, but he had taken her on a date and had that similar experience that Naruto had. He didn't understand why humans were so caught up with the color of someone's skin or looks. The only one who didn't seem to get the message was the ticket checker at the entrance door, but he was promptly fired by the manager for doing something as stupid as trying to kick out the heiress of the prodigious Hyuga clan of all people. The perks of royalty, came a voice from the hunters. Speaking of Hinata, she was thankful for Mrs. Yamanaka's advice on what to do on the date. The Aphrodite girls giggled at the mentioning of the word date as Kowalski's face crunched up as she was forced to repeat that word again. Their mother would be so proud of the little hunter girl. Even if it could be summed up as being herself with a few little extra tidbits here and there. At the same time though, she was extremely nervous inside as Naruto had told her about his run-in with Ino. If there was any moment she hated the blonde redhead's extreme denseness the most, it would have been right then and there, as it turned out he had told the gossip queen of Konoha all about their time together. Oh my silver doe, you know how to pick them. Leto hummed, secretly pleased at the denseness of the child. Flashback. You two have been going out for a month. Ino exclaimed in surprise, finally releasing her grip from Naruto's shirt after she managed to coerce the whole story out of him. Kate blinked as a thoughtful question came to her. What if Percy and Annabeth were dating in secret and they were pretending they weren't? After all, Annabeth was a child of wisdom, so she could have come up with a plan that would allow her to be with the boy she had a crush on without the scorn of her mother. If so, it could explain Percy's obliviousness, as he couldn't be that dumb. Meanwhile in DC, Percy sneezed, causing several federal officers to look around from their meal. He was convinced that Annabeth's cap would keep him from being seen by Zoe's party members. He had forgotten that even if he was heading to the museum, it was still the capital and that moral security would be on the lookout for strange persons. Stumbling back, he tripped over a bike rack, causing a ruckus that sent the officers his way. Now back to the camp. For the last time, we aren't dating. I am just making up for accidentally hurting Hinata while I was training. Naruto said again, only for his words to be completely ignored as Ino was now in full-blown gossip mode. Oh, this explains why Hinata's been acting so oddly recently. I thought she'd just been becoming more confident or maybe seeing a therapist, but this. She ranted, running her hands through her hair as she paced back and forth. All eyes looked towards the members of Aphrodite's cabin before sighing and looking back to the images in the fire and Kowalski reading. I never expected Miss Can't Speak Louder Than a Mouse of all people to manage to get together with someone before myself, and with you of all people. She mumbled, looking Naruto over dubiously. Hey, what's wrong with dating me? Naruto asked indignantly, getting in his fellow blonde's face as his irritation towards her earlier insults flaring back up. Random Hunter number 2 yelled out, you're the host of Our Lady. You're a boy. The fact you look like a cute baby animal, yelled out a dryad, causing a nearby satyr to grumble. Too innocent, and who needs to lose that orange? This actually seemed to knock Ino back to reality finally, as she looked at Naruto with a blank expression while rolling her eyes. You're super annoying, always pulling stupid pranks and goofing off, and the dead last of our class. Should I go on? She asked rhetorically. Pranks show tactical ingenuity in a non-harmful manner to utilize skills that will be needed on the battlefield. Traps and tactics aren't something that you can learn by a book but by practicing the various situations and conditions needed. A child of Ares summarized, causing Chiron to applaud him. Indeed, that is why I take measures to punish those caught, the trainer said before looking at the Hermes children, who all blushed. Before blinking in surprise when, instead of responding verbally, Naruto started digging around in his pockets. Finding what he was looking for after a few moments, Naruto pulled out a folded-up piece of paper and promptly shoved it into Ino's hands before pushing her out of the way and marching off angrily. Confused at what that was all about, Ino shrugged it off and looked down at the parchment now in her grasp. After a brief mental debate, her curiosity won out and she unfolded said paper. As soon as her gaze made contact with the content written upon the page though, the gossiper's jaw fell straight to the ground, the rest of her not far behind as she fainted. End flashback. So what was on it? Asked the camper who earlier interrupted the story. No one answered the question. While also upset at Ino for insulting her crush so blatantly, when Naruto had told Hinata what was on the paper had given her, she had felt much better and had even laughed a little. You see, after announcing the day everyone would come back to be put into teams, Baruka had passed out report cards detailing how well someone had done on the test and what rank they got in class. Ino had gotten ranked 8th place overall. This was something she'd been bragging about, as the only girls who'd gotten higher than her were Hinata herself, who beat her in the physical aspect, and Sakura, who beat her in the theoretical aspect. What Ino hadn't known until now, however, was that Naruto, the person she had insulted for being stupid and dead last, had gotten 7th place in the final rankings. The Apollo campers all broke out with grins as Leto sent them a thumbs up before she sent her daughter's handmaidens a small grin. Shows her that the idiot is smarter. Malcolm snickered along with the rest. Oh, she could imagine that drama queen's reaction already. This has been an awesome night. I am glad you talked me into this. Naruto said while giving Hinata a one-armed hug. We should do this again sometime. While glowing red from a blush, both from the hug and the blonde's thoughtless words, Hinata managed to keep herself calm with a few discreet deep breaths, another tip from Mrs. Yamanaka. How about after we get assigned to T teams? She suggested, mental grumbling when Naruto broke the hug until he turned to her with his trademark foxy smile. That sound great, we could even invite some of our friends while we're at it then. He said happily, missing the slight disappointment on Hinata's face since his eyes were closed. Poor girl, Mr. D said as he sipped his cola before looking at the reviews. Seems that the issue is still affecting the site. I blame the muses. Thank you Redlocks too for your suggestion to use the app. She was about to respond when Naruto suddenly stopped with a shiver before looking up to the sky. Following his gaze curiously, she blinked in surprise when she saw the moon just starting to peek out over the horizon. Leto hummed in thought. Artemis being a part of him for years might have made him into a form of demigod. And no Rio Skyren, I don't believe he'll adopt Naruto. Instead he'll force my daughter to adopt him so I can have my first grandchild from her. A hooded figure leaned over and whispered into Leto's ear. Yes I did say that didn't I huh? Think they'll notice in the comments. It's getting pretty late, we should be heading home soon. Naruto stated, trying to ignore the sudden rush of energy he felt the instant the moon's soft rays touched his skin. It happened every night and was the main reason he had such difficulty sleeping, with it being the strongest during the full moon and weakest on a new moon. The hunters nodded in sympathy for his condition. They all had to deal with the rush every time the chariot of their mistress rose in the sky. Hinata nodded in agreement, knowing how her father would get if she stayed out too late. While not the most vocal about it, Hiashi Hyuga did care deeply about her and would no doubt be very concerned over her unexplained absence. So, with a good amount of reluctance, she meekly bid Naruto goodnight and hurried off to the Hyuga compound before such an event could happen. Nico blinked his eyes and yawned a little from his seat. It sounded like something his mother said to his sister. He had so few memories of her now and each one he still had was a treasure for him. Meanwhile Naruto, after a brief mental conversation with Artemis, decided to go back to his training ground and burn off the extra steam he got before calling it a night. Besides, even though he graduated didn't mean he could slack off, especially since he still wanted to be Hokage one day. Kairon raised his goblet in a toast for the boy. So few heroes kept UO with their skills after leaving the camp as adults now and also the heroes of old. 5 days later, Academy. The entire classroom buzzed with chatter as the newly minted genin talked excitedly in their seats. Naruto was sitting near the window with Sasuke on one side using him as a fangirl barrier and Hinata on the other. Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru sat in front of them with the later dead asleep already. Behind them was Shino and 2 random boys, and to the side of them was Sakura, Ino and a horde of arguing fangirls. How did they pass? Wondered Phoebe in disbelief when she realized the idea that those fangirls would be ninjas. They're useless unless they are fodder. Most were discussing about who they thought or wanted to be teamed up with, the exceptions being Naruto, who was focused on calming down Artemis as she raged about how the fangirls were making women look pathetic. Hear hear, called out the hunters who rallied against the insults to all female warriors. And said fangirls themselves. They were more focused on arguing over a certain duck-butt-haired brooding Uchiha. Still cute, gushed Selena Beauregard before noticing the looks sent her way. What, he is cute in a way. With Sakura easily being the most vocal. Or at least, she was until the Pinkett noticed a complete lack of reaction from her rival Ino, who was just sitting in her spot while staring at the report card Naruto had given her with a look of denial. Naturally curious on what could possibly distract the platinum blonde from their precious Sasuke-kun, Sakura peered over her shoulder and started reading for herself. Uzumaki Naruto. Written exam. 91%. Taijutsu exam. 89%. Kunai throwing. 9/10. Shuriken throwing. 8/10. Ninjutsu exam. 2/3. Final results. 82%. Class ranking. 7th. Mark shook his head along with his siblings. How is trap making, obstacle course, and poisons not in there? Aren't they ninja? Ino, what are you doing with Naruto Baka's exam results? Sakura asked in confusion before a certain fact popped in her head. Wait a second, didn't you get ranked 8th? That would mean, she trailed off as the answer dawned on her, swiftly followed by an outburst of laughter as she fell into her seat while holding her sides. Wahahaha, you got a lower grade than Naruto of all people, she said between laughs, drawing the other girl's attention. Faster than you could blink, Sakura's laughter turned into yelps of pain as she was knocked out of her seat and trampled by the horde of females that crowded around Ino. Nemesis and Eris acting there, called out a son of Hephaestus. Malcolm nodded. Don't count on perceptions to know if you're right. And gapped at the sheet in her hands then at Naruto as he rubbed his head in irritation. Naruto sighed in relief as he finally managed to get Artemis to relax with the promise of letting her have full control Saturday night for a hunting trip and a long soak at the hot springs. Does it count as watching Artemis bathe if she's in control of his body, or are we gonna see another Acteon or Cypriotes? Asked Connor to the closest hunter. She hummed before shrugging. Neither, as Naruto has to bath to get clean and it's not her body. Otherwise you'll have been right. Before he could relax, however, he felt a sudden chill run down his spine as a shadow fell over him. Looking up, he blinked in surprise when he found himself surrounded by the girls of his class, each one glowering down at him while cracking their knuckles threateningly. If any one of you tries to get me to go back and repeat an entire section, I will skewer you with an arrow to every non-vital part of your body. Kowalski growled before anyone got any ideas. Please don't, Miss Kowalski. I don't need the paperwork for that. Can I help you with something? Naruto asked slightly nervously, discreetly doing the hand signs for the Kawarimi under the desk just in case. Make sure if you're attacked switch with that Sake fellow with the duck haircut or that puppy food Kibi. Thought Dionysus as he mentally checked his memory of the word. It's something I would do to Hermes and Ares if necessary. The chuas it would cause. Thankfully, before the angry fangirls could try anything, Iruka entered the room. Alright everyone, take your seats and quiet down, the man said as he walked over to his desk, only for his to start twitching as he was completely ignored. Chiron bowed his head in respect. To all my fellow educators who deal with teenagers and children. I said, sit down and shut up, he yelled, making everyone jump before scrambling to their seats. That works too. Once they were all properly seated, Iruka quickly double-checked that everyone was present before pulling out the scroll with the teams listed on them. Now before I start with team assignments and before any of you ask, Mizuki will not be joining us due to medical issues. Iruka stated. What happened? Did he get sick or something? Asked Lee. His brother shook his head. Heart attack or an accident may be more likely. He is a ninja after all and accidents do happen. Getting a few curious looks, but most didn't really care as not many really liked the white-haired teacher. Of course, even if he did show up, no one would recognize him after what happened to him last week after the ninja exams. Head apparently tried to break into the Hokage vault and steal the scroll of seals right during the night. The Hermes kids shook their heads. What kind of amateur thief steals at night? It's so cliché to have a night heist. Why not in the early morning or late evening so that the guards are all tired and not all aware? Brother dear, we're the sons of TGE greatest thief, so we should know better. Here. Only to get caught red-handed by Tsunade when she showed up to drop off her bi-weekly medical reports from the hospital. The end results were, Konoha Hospital, in the intensive care wing, what could only be described as a mummy lied on one of the beds with an air mask and heart monitor attached to it showing it was still alive. All winced at the description, but he did try to steal a document after all, so no one was sorry for him. This was especially clear when a certain busty blonde walked in and the heart monitor started beeping rapidly. It then practically overloaded when Tsunade was joined by a purple-haired, brown-eyed woman wearing a large open tan trench coat showing her scantily clad form with a smirk and a really big needle in her hands full of an unknown clear fluid. All who were afraid of needles looked away faster than the ambrosia cupcakes did during a party. Now Mizuki, you're going to tell us everything we need to know. The unknown woman said with a sadistic grin as she pointed the needle at him. And don't worry, this will only hurt a lot. Finally someone who speaks truth in the doctor's office. Random Huntress number 5 declared with cheers all around. Academy. Not pretty, to say the least. Anyway, to the reason all of you are here, Iruka said as he unrolled the scroll in his hands and everyone began paying rapt attention. Team 1 will is K fast-forwarding sound effect. Team 7 is Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Shikamaru Nara. Your team leader is Kakashi Hatake, Iruka said, rolling his eyes at the cheer, muffled groan, and snore he got in response before continuing. So the broody boy, fangirl and lazy are in a team, anyone else thinking that's a riff off somewhere? Scooby-Doo, asked the idiot camper who made them repeat the story. The quest members of 1452 consisting of the son of Hades, daughter of Aphrodite and the son of Morpheus who were tasked to recover a painting for Hera that Hermes stole in the city of Lorca during the Battle of Los Alporchones. Peter Johnson, Annabelle and that sidear to get my father's bolt. All stared at Mr. D's suggestion. What? Please go on Miss Kowalski. A nymph said as to move on. Team 8 is Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame with Kurenai Yuhi as your leader. Kiba whooped happily as his puppy Akamaru woofed, Shino had no visible reaction, and Hinata just looked glum at the fact she wouldn't be on the same team as Naruto. At least one of them looks like a ninja and Hinata has been given advice by Lady Artemis. Phoebe noted with pride. Team 9 is still in circulation. Finally, Team 10 will be Choji Akamichi, Ino Yamanaka, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your team leader is Asuma Sarutobi. So we're having Naruto be with Ino, the possible grandchild of Demeter, plus Choji. Not one of mine, Mr. D stated firmly. Naruto, while a little saddened that he wasn't on the same team as either Sakura or Hinata, still smiled cheerfully as he high-fived Choji and accepted the small bag of chips the big boned boy offered him. Ino finally seemed to snap out of her daze, and opened her mouth to start bitching, but a sharp look from Iruka shut her right up. Choji seems nice, Asator noted as he ate a bag of chips that Nico wasn't gonna eat. Sensei, why do I have to be paired up with this lazy idiot? Hell, just drag me and Sasuke down with his slothfulness. The same could not be said for Sakura, however. Says the fangirl. Hush. For a very simple reason, Sakura, Iruka said in his patented lecture voice, the teams are specifically set up to be as balanced as possible. For example, we traditionally have the two highest scoring students, he gestures to the Pinkett and Sasuke, and the lowest scoring student, Iruka points to Shikamaru who's still snoring away. Put on the same team to balance to both encourage the failing student to do better and keep the better students from getting too high in ego. A smart idea. Many strong or intelligent men and women have gotten themselves and others killed due to a swelled head. Artemis said to Naruto solemnly, having seen such cases many times in her long lifespan. One example was a daughter of Athena she had only just recruited in the 1800s who'd gotten herself and 3 other hunters eaten by a cyclops after arrogantly believing she could defeat the monster on her own with her inherited high intelligence. All the Athena children found the clouds in the sky rather appealing all of a sudden. Naruto nodded at that, but didn't say anything as he knew he tended to get cocky and overconfident during a fight himself. He was a little better than he used to be though, thanks to Artemis' words of wisdom and Tsunade literally beating some humility into him every once in a while. Kowalski rubbed her chin. Maybe if the boys here were placed under Artemis in our direction for a year they'll be less annoying. Filing that thought away for later, she returned to the book. With that all cleared up, please wait here until your new Kyoshi teachers arrive here shortly for your first team meetings. Iruka told them while rolling up the team list scroll and heading for the door. Just before he left though, the nose-scarred man turned back to the class and bowed. It has been my honor teaching you, and I wish you all the best of luck. How many body bags do you think he's grabbing, Mr. D? What? With his piece said, Iruka exited the classroom, leaving behind a complete silence that held the room for several moments before the door opened again and 2 people stepped inside. The first was a man with black hair and beard, tan skin, and a cigarette in his mouth, while the other was a woman who was also black-haired, with pale skin and striking red eyes. Teammate with me, the woman said with a wave of her arm, only having to wait a few seconds before Hinata, Shino, and a visibly drooling Kiba. Phoebe made a face that was shared by the RST of the hunt. Disgusting. Stood in front of her before heading right back out the door again with her team in tow. The man on the other hand seemed content to just stand there and finish his cigarette. Once he was down to the butt, he spat it out and smothered it with his foot before smiling lightly. I am here for Team 10, please follow me. And choked as a fly flew in. Chiron gagged as his body tried to expel the insect that had unexpectedly entered. As he choked on the insect, Mr. D lazily read the comments. Let's see here, oh goody, there's 2 Spanish reviews here. Cenar con la divinidad, Podría buscar eso. Oh, and Chiron, would you please stop with your fake coughing? It's quite annoying, Mr. D said as he barely looked up from his cell. Rolling her eyes, Leto walked over to the centaur and began to smack his back to get his airway cleared. While the trainer of heroes was immortal, choking still hurt. Now where was I? Ah yes. Chefinator. Chefinator. Sounds German or perhaps Dutch. Or maybe Polish. The fact that he wrote his review in English makes it all the harder to know. Curse you Hermes for making morals protected via internet safety laws. Otherwise I might have gone to say hello to those nice female reviewers, but no, Father Dearest said that we can't do so. Oi, Sally Beerlert of Cabin 10. You're reading now. What? A confused voice came from the crowd of demigods as the one in question stood up rather suddenly. Her face was blushed as well as Charles Beckendorf's, making their siblings snicker. I don't want to read. But the god didn't care. Snapping his fingers, the book flew up from next to Chiron, who was finally able to breathe again. Ready or not, it's your turn. Grumbling under her breath about a certain god ruining her love life, she opened the book. Chefinator, why did you ruin my time with him? Do you hate me? And now, inside a small barbecue restaurant, the 3 members of the newly formed Team 10 sat on one side of a table while their just as newly assigned sensei sat down on the other and quickly ordered them all something to eat. He then proceeded to light up the personal grill built into the middle of the table and set it to the proper temperature. A casual meal to get to know the new members, smart. Though Phoebe as she took some grilled rabbit from a plate. The camp nymphs were so helpful. Well then, while we're waiting for the food to arrive, let's get a little more acquainted, shall we? The man, Asuma if Iruka was to be believed, said as he relaxed into his seat and lit up a cigarette. Just share your name, skills, and maybe a few facts about yourself if you'd like. I'll start. The name's Asuma Sarutobi. I'll be your teacher for the indeterminate time it takes you all to either get promoted, an apprenticeship, quit, or die. Mr. D grinned. Ooh, I like him. Perhaps I'll steal that when we have new campers. Please don't. was the response from Chiron. The way he said that last bit so bluntly and casually making the three of them cringe slightly, he certainly wasn't sugarcoating anything. I am a close combat specialist preferring knives, with a few wind and fire jutsu under my belt. I am a pretty chill guy, just don't mess with my smokes or else. Asuma said, twirling a customized trench knife lazily. That's the one our lady has to listen to? Asked Random Hunter 1. Meanwhile, a daughter of Ares along with Malcolm were trying to convince one of the camp smiths to forge one of those sweet trench knives Asuma had. Before pointing it at Naruto. You next. While a little unnerved, the blonde redhead quickly shook it off and introduced himself. I am Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage Databayo. I prefer using knives as well, but also know a bit of archery thanks to Artie Nichan. He said cheerfully, earning two confused looks from Ino and Choji. Leto smiled. Artemis would rule the day any student of hers couldn't use a bow. Nei-chan huh, Apollo, it looks like you have competition for the right of being best sibling. In the sky a certain sun god started to sneeze uncontrollably. Achoo, I hate hay fever, always ruins my sightseeing. Achoo. Artie Nichan. The two unknowingly thought at the same time while Ino struggled to restrain her inner gossip queen from popping out and force her fellow blonde into telling her what she wanted. Okay folks, what's the biting it so far for her? Travis yelled out as he and his brother got out a chart for the bids. We got. No gambling, came Chiron's stern voice making the Hermes children pout. Naruto had already told her about his bow training, having had to mention it when he was coerced into talking about his relationship with Hinata, but he had not mentioned who was teaching him, so she had assumed he was self-taught. Actually, she had thought he had been bullshitting her in an attempt to look cool. Break her kneecaps by shooting an arrow through them. Be sure to say it was an accident. Kowalski thought as her sister-in-arms Phoebe and the rest of the hunters found themselves hating the blonde Jen and Ino. Ino was brought out of her thoughts when a waitress came by and set down a large tray of different uncooked meats, vegetables, sauces, chopsticks, and plates. Recognizing the woman as the mother of one of her friends in the academy, the blonde was about to greet her, but stopped when she noticed the stink eye the waitress was giving Naruto. This was odd for Ino since, being the gossiper that she was, as far as she knew Naruto hadn't done anything to the woman to deserve such hostility. The immortals frowned, although Dionysus hid his by drinking a soda. Naruto was proving to be an interesting lad, and although this was a reading, Leto wondered if she should find the boy and give him a minor blessing. Perhaps Hera could be persuaded to help along with Hestia. The queen was ficky with her blessings, but Leto was sure she'll like the boy. Her curiosity piqued. She filed the thought away for later as she split a pair of chopsticks and started placing lots of the meats and veggies on the grill. Better make sure to eat plenty or mom will tan my rear again. She thought with a grimace. Mrs. Yamanaka had brought the hammer down on her daughter last month after the 5th time she'd tried extreme dieting. The daughters of Aphrodite all grimaced. They all had to go through the annual lecture of how to be healthy and beautiful and knew the risk dieting had. Aphrodite made sure her daughters knew the costs graphically, having gotten help from Athena to make a demigod-rated film on the matter. So Ino had gotten off lightly compared to some of them. At least the film was mandatory for all campers once they reached 16. Ino couldn't sit properly for almost 3 days from the spanking she got, and for added measure, she was forced to read several books describing the many downsides of her kind of dieting in very vivid detail. While many were horrible in their own right, the worst one in her opinion was the very high possibility of becoming barren, and she certainly couldn't get Sasuke to fall for her if she couldn't even have children. Oh, the horror, mocked Random Hunter 7. Why would anyone want a parasitic copy of them coming out of their bodies? Wisely, no one challenged her sarcastic remark. However, Leto made sure to have a talk with that huntress for that comment. She had even tried to warn Sakura about it, but sadly the Pinkett had simply accused her of trying to trick her. Not only continued to diet, but had started doing even more extreme ones, and Ino was beginning to see exactly what her mother had been warning her about. Her best friend turned rival's skin had been slowly losing pigment while becoming unnaturally tighter and withdrawn around her cheeks and joints. At the same time, Sakura had been increasingly lethargic as of late, with their usual arguments over Sasuke ending sooner and sooner due to her needing to sit down and rest. The hunters and daughters of love nodded sadly to that description. The extremes that people went for love at times went too far for looks. Why would you do that to yourself? It was one thing to fast, but Sakura needed flesh on her bones for her duties as well as for her teenage growth spurt. Before these dark thoughts could get any farther though, Ino was once again forced back to reality, this time by someone loudly clearing their throat. Looking towards the source, she found herself under Asuma, Naruto, and Choji's expectant stares. Turned out while she was distracted, Choji had gone through his introduction and now they were waiting for her. Oh, hi, I am Ino Yamanaka. I know some of my clan's techniques, and a variety of poisonous and medicinal plants. And as you can see, the most beautiful kunoichi of the year. Ino said, adding a mock flirtatious wink at the end that Asuma rolled his eyes good-naturedly at. Hardly, thought Selena as she flipped the page. Hinata looks more pretty than you are. Well then, now that is out of the way we can move on to the main deal, your final exam. Which starts as soon as you're done eating. The moment these words left Asuma's mouth, three things happened at once. Choji actually stopped eating, Naruto choked on a piece of pork, and Ino dropped her chopsticks. What final exam? Naruto and Ino demanded at the same time, both standing up and getting in the mon's face only to quickly be repulsed with an unnaturally fragrant puff of cigarette smoke. Mother of Zeus, what in Tartarus are those things made of? Artemis gagged as she smelt the pungent smell through Naruto. No idea, but I am never smoking, ever. Naruto replied, waving his hand desperately to hasten the noxious fumes' dispersal. The Apollo children along with their aunt's attendants nodded their heads. Meanwhile, a tiny smirk appeared on Asuma's lips as he watched the two blondes struggle with a watered-down version of his Kaden. Kitsuen Sha no Jigoku, fire release, smoker's hell. Smoking magical spell, joy, a dull-toned camper said with a sigh. It's rather easy to explain really. After a group of newly minted genin such as yourselves are put into a squad and assigned a team leader, said team leader will put said squad through a personal test. This is to see if you all are actually worthy of being shinobi and if the time and effort put into training you further would be a waste. If failed, you all will be immediately sent back to the academy for continued training or dropped from the program entirely. Blunt, direct, and straight to the point. I like that, the moon goddess commented with a nod of approval towards the explanation. She always hated when one danced around the subject at hand using half-truths and or overly complicated wording, making it nearly impossible to figure out what they truly said in the end. Multiple campers nodded their heads as they all eyed the children of gods who were known for word trickery. Especially when it involved dealing either her brother, Hermes, or Aphrodite, as they were experts in the art of wordplay. What about Athena? She does it too, yelled Mark. He got no response to his claim. Your test is a relatively simple one and, as I've already said, starts as soon as you're done eating. All you have to do is find and capture me in training ground 10 before 5 o'clock. Poof! Before any of the kids could respond to his declaration, the bearded smoker was engulfed in a puff of more foul smoke that left them all, Artemis included, still hacking and coughing. Once it cleared up, Asuma was naturally nowhere to be seen, only a small stack of bills to pay for the meal. Nice, thought Nico in awe of the mon's skills. Glancing at the clock and seeing that it was already 2:15, the trio quickly scarfed down their food and hurried out of the restaurant. We need to hurry. The train grounds are on the other side of Konoha. Ino yelled as she ran down the street, missing the blank looks she was getting from Naruto and Choji. As well as the campers. Isn't she a ninja, so why is she? Perhaps she needed to find a toilet first. Use the rooftops, Dofuus. You forgot your teammates. If you're being tested, should you use what assets you have been given? Dumb blonde. Slap out. It's true and you know it's sunshine. I want an apology for that comment. I am blonde too and I am a child of Apollo, does that make me stupid? No, my sunshiny day. She's not seriously going by road, is she? Naruto asked Choji blankly, receiving a slow nod of confirmation in response. I'll get her, meet you there. The blonde redhead said, getting another nod before they separated with Naruto dashing after Ino while Choji took to the rooftops. Before Ino even realized what happened, she found herself quite literally swept off her feet and soaring through the air as Naruto grabbed her and leapt up on top of the nearest building. He's her superhero, snickered Katie. Reacting instinctually, she squirmed wildly while assaulting the sparkled-eyed boy with a flurry of smacks and jabs. What the hell, Naruto Baka? What are you doing? Put me down. D shook his head. Poor choice of words. The harpies looked at one another and sighed as memories of campus who got trapped in high places needed help down. They always were ungrateful for the help they did for the campers for getting down. She quickly got her wish as an annoyed-looking Naruto promptly dropped her on her ass, making her yelp from both surprise and pain. It'll be faster to go by rooftop, we can cut right across to the training grounds. He told her bluntly as she was recovering, then dashing off. Standing up slowly, Ino winced as she rubbed her lightly bruised posterior while glaring at the direction Naruto had gone. Hey, that is not how you treat a lady. Get back here, you Baka, and apologize. She screamed as she started chasing after him. Malcolm snickered. She's got the Demeter temper. For real, dude, Pollux replied with a grin before the Demeter camper next to him punched his arm. -15 minutes later, Naruto landed in Training Ground 10, a lightly forested area with several large creeks and stone outcroppings, and casually walked over to Choji, who was happily eating a bag of chips. Ino showed up a few seconds later, though her landing wasn't as thump huff wheeze graceful. Naruto, Choji, and Artemis' sweat dropped at the sight of the exhausted girl slowly standing up while trying to catch her breath. She cannot be serious, please tell me she isn't serious. The moon goddess asked dully. Her newly recruited ex-civilian hunters could normally manage that kind of exercise with only moderate trouble, and this girl looked like she was going to hurl. And the members of Cabin 10. They don't look half as winded during quests or when we show up. An ill-looking huntress stated as she wondered how in Hades that Ino was a ninja. The children of 10 all pruned up with the huntress remark, before deflating when she went on. Perhaps she ate too much. No comments, ladies. Well, have them eat those words. Selena said to her siblings who were shooting daggers at the hunters from their eyes. Don't be too harsh, Ne-chan, Naruto thought as he fished out a storage scroll out of his kunai pouch and unrolled. With a quick application of chakra and a poof of smoke, his quiver, bow, and knife sheaths appeared in his hands. She probably just had too much to eat or something. It seems Naruto is picking up the mindset of us hunters, Phoebe said to the hunter from Elior. The huntress, Random 3, shrugged her shoulders. Considering that Artemis is with him for an extended period of time, did you doubt so? Leto snickered with amusement at the momentary commentary. Your unending optimism never ceases to amaze me, Artemis said in the same bland tone while Naruto hooked everything up. Seriously, was there anything that could keep this boy down for long? Lack of sleep because of a goddess sister, Mr. D thought to himself. I aim to please, Naruto thought with a smile, notching an arrow while turning to Choji and a recovered Ino. Well, we're here, let's get this test finished, he said, bouncing on the balls of his feet excitedly. His mood quickly dropped though when Ino shoved him to the side and stood over him. Alright, first things first, I am in charge, you and Piggy. But is it not that her name mean pig? Asked a dryad in confusion. Her extended family shrugged their shoulders. Humans were the weirdest creatures. Over there, better not slow me down. I will not fail this test because you two slackers dragged me down, she said with a huff before marching off in a random direction. Naruto and Choji glanced at each other before shrugging in sync and following the girl's lead, neither of them noticing Asuma observing them from above. So about Artemis training. Zip it, boy. Hey, you got any spare snacks, Choji? Instead of verbally replying, Choji simply pulled another bag of chips out from one of his pockets and handed it to Naruto. Thanks. 1 hour later. Hurry up, would you? We need to go faster. No, go that way, we already looked in that direction. Stop jostling so much, and keep your hands where I can see them or else ill. Can I shoot her, please? Naruto asked with a twitching eyebrow as he tried to tune out Ino's complaining as she rode on his shoulders. They had been looking all over the training ground with absolutely no luck, and the gossip queen had eventually started complaining about her feet hurting. Choji carried her for a bit only for her to complain about crumbs getting on her, so now Naruto was stuck doing it. So here they were, tree hopping all over the place as Ino constantly bitched. I could make it look like an accident. The daughters of the war gods and the hunters nodded. Teach that girl a lesson in respect, Naruto. No, it's not worth the trouble, Artemis said through gritted teeth while rubbing her forehead in a vain attempt to prevent the headache she could feel forming. Mr. D could feel the looks sent his way. Yes, we can get headaches. We get rid of them by blasting the irritating source to bits. Mr. D, no disintegrations. Please, sighed Chiron as the demigods looked away. Could you give me a hand then? You are the one who knows how to track after all, Naruto pointed out. Could we get somewhere shadier? I am sweating like eek. Ino shrieked out when her ride suddenly dropped to the ground and bucked her off. What the hell, Naruto? What are you? Silence. Ino and Choji froze as they heard Artemis' voice come out from Naruto's mouth as they saw his eye colors suddenly switch. The hunters all cheered for Artemis taking of command. You are no longer leading, you have done nothing but complain while guiding us in circles. Ino was about to complain some more before shivering as she literally felt the irritation behind those words, and suddenly had an odd craving for carrots. Carrots. Chiron licked his lips at the thought of the delicious vegetables. Naruto, what's up with your voice? Choji asked nervously. Call me Artemis, Naruto will explain later, but right now we have a prey to track down. So be silent, Artemis said, her gaze flickering in several different directions while she strained her hearing to the max before settling on a tree several feet to her left. HMPH, too easy. Pay attention, this is the plan. Up in the tree line, Asuma's eyes narrowed as he watched the interaction between his possible students. Father wasn't kidding, he truly does become a different person, he thought, watching with slight amazement as Naruto's appearance changed, but his body language shifted from excited and eager to calm, collected, and alert. The third Hokage had warned him on the boy's unique condition, but it was still quite intriguing to see firsthand. Because Artemis is a different person, you stupid mortals, snapped Leto before she grabbed a platter of fried ribs and a large glass of juice. Of course, that intrigue didn't prevent him from dodging accordingly as 2 arrows embedded themselves in the branch he had been standing on. Seeing that had been made, Asuma dropped to the ground in front of the 3. Good job, you 3, you finally found me, he said, mentally noting that Naruto was back to normal. Now you just have to catch me, if you can. Gingerbread cookie monster thieves of winter 1972, asked Chiron to Phoebe. She shrugged. Let's go with that. Oddest year for the record so far in recent memory. He taunted while casually catching an arrow flying at him. Just watch us Entatsu-sensei, Smokestack-sensei. Well, kick your ass all the way to next week if we have to. Naruto declared while lining up another shot, only instead of having a regular arrowhead, this one had 16 edges. The reason for this was soon revealed as Naruto released the shot. Asuma was about to deflect it using the arrow still in his grasp when the projectile suddenly split apart midair, revealing a net made of ninja wire that quickly snared him. The archers all hummed in approval. Before Naruto could enjoy his success though, Asuma disappeared in a puff of smoke leaving behind a log in his place. Damn, Hikawar ga. Naruto was cut off mid-sentence by a heavy kick to his back that sent him flying face first into a tree. OWWWWWW. Always be aware of your surroundings, Asuma said from where Naruto used to stand, rapidly striking out with 2 punches that sent his other 2 hopeful students tumbling away. Failing to do so can and will lead to your demise. Peeling his face out of the tree, Naruto spat out a mouthful of bark with a grimace while shouldering his bow, summoning his knives, and charging straight at the smoking man with a rising slash. The Ares campers all cheered, finally some action. Get him, yelled one as he tried to pay attention while eating a sandwich. Gorge and I, commented another. He never got close though as Asuma easily blocked the strike, and the several follow-ups, with his trench knives. Good form, noted Chiron. Not bad, though the style clearly isn't suited for him. Asuma thought, noting the look of discomfort in Naruto's face as he did a semi-complex feint that made it look like he was attacking the chest when he was really aiming for the legs. He was slightly surprised though when Naruto suddenly aborted his assault entirely with a wide grin, but was pretty sure he knew why when he felt the ground start rumbling underneath his feet. Human boulder, Choji yelled as his now giant ball-like form barreled through the area like an angry rhino. While the smoker was busy dodging the big bone boy, Naruto redrew his bow and pulled out 2 different arrows. The first was similar to his net arrow only with 20 slightly curved edges instead of 16 straight, while the second had a ridged metal shaft and a black round arrowhead. Nothing them both at the same time, Naruto leapt back several feet before lining up his shot while channeling chakra into both arrows, giving them a light blue sheen. Wait for the signal, wait for it, there. Naruto thought as he spotted Ino peeking out from behind a tree, using a kunai to reflect the light in a specific pattern. As soon as he saw this, Naruto fired, sending the first arrow sailing high into the sky until it vanished among the clouds. The second one on the other hand flew straight at Asuma just as he hopped out of the way of another charge from Choji. In a show of near-inhuman flexibility though, Asuma bent backwards nearly 90 degrees, allowing the arrow to pass over him harmlessly, or so he thought. When he leaned back up, he felt something lightly bite into his cheek and instinctually grabbed it. Wire, he wondered, before turning his head when he heard an odd noise behind him. What he was greeted with was the sight of the arrow bouncing off of trees, rocks, and other such debris all around him while leaving behind a trail of ninja wire that got caught on the handles of several kunais that had been strategically placed throughout the area. In less than 30 seconds, a veritable web of the thin metal cord completely surrounded him as Naruto caught the bouncing projectile and pulled the whole thing taut. Seconds later, the arrow he shot into the sky came back into view, having split into 20 separate shots connected by another net as they spun rapidly. Falling perfectly around Asuma, the net snagged onto the cords surrounding him, pulling them even more closely together and trapping him further. Kyujutsu. Tsuki no Shizukeji, Bow Art, Lunar Constellation Cage. Naruto said with a grin while mentally thanking Artemis for helping him come up with this trick. Everyone clapped their hands in approval of the trick. Now Ino, Choji yelled, having shrunk back down to regular size. Shintenshin no Jutsu, the blonde girl cried, forming a square with her hands and pointing it towards Asuma, then suddenly going limp and collapsing. At the same time, Asuma suddenly became entirely still for several moments before a mischievous grin crossed his lips. I got him. 5 minutes later, Asuma didn't make a sound as he felt Ino release her possession on him, not even bothering trying to move as he felt the ninja wire binding him from the neck down while Naruto, Ino, and Choji stood over him with identical triumphant smiles. Looks like you 3 got me, guess that means you passed the test. He said with a grin, making the 3 cheer happily before jumping back in surprise as the Mont's binding suddenly fell loose and he stood up without issue. Congratulations Team 10, meet me here tomorrow at 8 o'clock for training. Before we go on, does anyone know how the questers are doing? Asked a camper. Probably Zoe is ranting at Percy at the moment for interfering, Kowalski suggested calmly. Or Zeus' daughter Talia, commented Miranda, Percy, Talia called to the son of the sea, whatever you're going to do. The Nemean lion roared and swatted her like a cat toy, sending her flying into the side of a Titan rocket. Her head hit the metal and she slid to the floor. Percy, seeing this, did something stupid. Hey, he shouted before throwing his sword like a throwing knife. Zoe's face paled at the stupid idiotic moronic son of the see-through riptide, his only weapon at the lion whose skin naturally made the blade bounce off. Dear lady, why, just why is this boy so stupid? She prayed, yelled in her mind. She watched as the lion charged at Poseidon's son as she took aim with her bow. Maybe if Tyche was with her she could kill the monster by shooting its eye. Before she could fire her bow, the boy threw a cell phone-sized silver package into the monster's mouth. The cat gagged as it got the item stuck in its mouth. Perhaps I was mistaken about him. He may be stupid, but he might be onto something. Miranda and Kowalski looked at one another before shrugging their shoulders. They'll get the story once the quest ended. For now Nico had the book and the young boy was ready to begin. As the god of madness, I am glad to see that this author is getting frustrated with naming the hunters. Also, making a useless statement that helps no one and is useless to the story. Keep up the good work, me. Oh, an author, keep calling them random so-and-so like Random Hunter 5th to take away individuality. I'll do it later as you're too lazy to do it now. Unhelpfully and randomly spouting, Mr. D said, annoying the author. Don't engage him, Miss Phoebe. Chiron sighed as he rubbed his head because of the headache that was forming because of the wine god. Phoebe growled and stabbed the table with an arrow even as her sisters glared at the older immortal. And please, Nico, read before someone is hurt. Okay. Nico yawned as he opened the book to the current chapter as the sun began its descent. Naruto expected a lot of things when he finally became a fully fledged ninja. He expected long adventure-filled missions filled with fighting, saving lives, and having awesome adventures. He anticipated long hard training sessions where he struggled to learn new, badass techniques to make him a better ninja. He did not expect to be crouching in some civilian woman's garden pulling out weeds with his two teammates while said woman stood over their shoulders and telling him off for every little mistake. I said get all of the weeds, that includes the roots. Oi, be careful with the petunias, girl, I spend months cultivating them to perfection. Those aren't petunias but calibrachoas. A child of Demeter spoke up. Calibrachoa is a genus of plants in the Solanaceae family. They are evergreen short-lived perennials and subshrubs with a sprawling habit, with small petunia-type flowers. On the other hand, Petunia is a genus of at least 20 recognized species of flowering plants originating from South America. The popular flower of the same name derived its epithet from the French, which took the word pechin, meaning tobacco, from a Tupi-Guarani language. Mr. D let out a loud burp, interrupting what was an interesting talking point of his nephew. Seeing his chance, Nico went on. I freaking hate D-rank missions. Naruto thought with a twitching eyebrow as he stuffed a handful of dandelions into a compost bin. He and his team had been stuck doing these things for almost 3 weeks now and they were starting to get on his last nerve. On that we agree, these things are nothing but a complete waste of time and my patience. Artemis said as she massaged her forehead, these missions were nothing more than glorified chores and a lot of the time the civilian hiring them whined and bitched about almost everything. The worst one in her opinion was catching that stupid cat Tora. She had felt every single scratch that Naruto had gotten and not even her natural affinity towards animals had been able to calm that stupid feline down. Maybe she'll thank us if we calm her down with music, a satyr said as he nibbled a can to his older brother. As if, just meeting her is so relaxing with the smells of the wild. The older one sighed in fond memory of an encounter with the goddess. At least the training makes up for it somewhat, Naruto thought. Throughout the 3 weeks Asuma had been drilling the three of them through various team and individual exercises while also teaching them to improve their chakra control with the tree climbing technique. This involved walking up a tree or vertical surface. Okay. Who else wishes they had that power? Everyone's hands rose as the demigods and hunters agreed that power would be helpful. But Chiron had a reasonable response to that. Seeing all of you wish to learn, well, have an entire day using the rock wall tomorrow to help you lot learn to scale it parallel. Who knew Chiron was a sadist? Whispered Travis, summarizing the thoughts of everyone. All but Nico. What's so bad about the rock climbing? By channeling chakra to the bottom of your feet, too little and you wouldn't stick while too much would destroy the tree under our feet. And don't forget we finally found a way for you to have your own body thanks to Ino and Asuma-sensei. Oh joy, Artemis is free to explore without the boy. A dour-sounding Mr. D earned himself a near stabbing, ignored by him as he took a sip of coke. And here I was enjoying the boy's descendance into insanity. Would have given him my blessings too if father allows it. I shudder at the blessing hell grant that boy after spending years with Artemis. Kowalski grunted out hearing what he said. She turned towards her sisters. Although, after spending so much time with Artemis, hell be a great hunter candidate. I'll admit that is a boon, there's hope for that girl yet. Shortly after the test, Naruto was forced to explain his split personality to Choji and Ino thanks to Artemis' little appearance. While the chubby boy had trouble understanding, Ino was easily able to grasp the concept thanks to her having to study the human mind while learning her clan's techniques. After a long and very personal series of questions that Naruto was forced to answer in order to get his fellow blonde to agree not to tell anyone about it, Ino had jokingly commented on getting Artemis her own body so she wouldn't have to deal with being stuck in Naruto's head. Instead of being insulted though, Naruto had grown curious about the idea and had asked Asuma if such a thing was possible. He in turn had said that there might be one, but he had to run it past the Hokage first. 2 days later, Naruto was the proud new user of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, a more complex and chakra-intensive version of the Bunshin no Jutsu that made solid fully functional copies of the user. By making a single one of these, Naruto could allow Artemis to possess it and still remain in complete control of his own body. When she did this, Naruto would lose most of the silver flecks in his eyes and the clone would automatically change to Artemis' true appearance. Malcolm sulked along with Mark. Solid clones sounded amazing to the children of war. The uses in battle would be endless. Certain other demigods however were thinking of the many pranks and get-out-of-jail cards they could do, grinning large cat smiles like a feline from Alice in Wonderland. The only downsides were that A. The clones tended to disperse after taking only a single hit so Artemis had to be extra careful and B. For some reason whenever Artemis did this, a thin golden chain would burst from the back of Naruto's neck and latch onto hers. Kinky. The one who said that has until midnight to make her funeral arrangements. Random Hunter 3 slowly spoke, smirking when the daughter of Aphrodite paled and squeaked in terror. Well, there was also the 6-hour shopping spree that Ino had forcefully dragged the both of them into to buy Artemis some new clothes, but the two had agreed never to mention that horrible experience ever again, so many dresses. Shiver. The hunters all collectively shivered as well. They and Artemis had to go dress shopping with Aphrodite after a drunken Artemis wanted to know the latest trends in the mid-18th century. The corsets of that era were evil. Ironically, the goddess of love and Artemis both convinced Hades to torture the individual for the invention of them. Although Artemis was sure that the only reason they were still around was to spit her after she burned the dress she had gotten that day. Still, despite these drawbacks, Naruto had been nonetheless super happy to finally be able to meet his Nichan face to face for the first time and had given Ino a near back-breaking hug in thanks. His face still stung from the slapping she had given him in response, but he didn't mind one bit. Worth it, giggled Selena as it was so cute learning how Naruto reacted to meeting the IRL goddess and his excitement. Still, hopefully Asuma-sensei will keep his word and will finally get to do AC rank after this. Naruto thought while digging his hands back into the soil with a grunt, sending a sidelong glance to said man as he leaned against a fence smoking. As far as males go, he seems trustworthy enough. If not however, I will show him exactly how I earned the title of Huntress. Artemis said, cracking her knuckles for added emphasis. Naruto shivered slightly at the thought, remembering how effectively the goddess had tracked, killed, and butchered an 800-pound bear during her promised hunting trip. He learned 2 things that day: bear steak is awesome when grilled with barbecue sauce and he never wanted to be hunted by Artemis. There was a loud, collective gulp from the boys making the hunters smile. That might be taking it a little too far, don't you think? No. Shikanon is able to do far worse. Phoebe knew it, Chiron knew it, and the myths barely scratched the surface of Artemis' rage. The silence he received was all the answer he needed. Alright boys and girls, that's a wrap for today. Asuma's voice cut in as he rolled up a small scroll with the civilian woman's signature on it, said woman giving all 3 of them a disgusting glare before marching back into her house. Let's head over to the mission hall and well get that C rank I promised you all. Finally, if I had to listen to that woman whine one more time I swear I was going to mind jump her and make her do the chicken dance in the market district. Ino grumbled while wiping fertilizer off her hands. Those stupid flowers aren't even petunias there. Calibracoas, you'd think she'd know that with how much effort she put in caring for them. Naruto cut in with equal annoyance as he stood up and dusted himself off. Noticing the long silence around him, he glanced around to see Ino staring at him in surprise. What, me and Artie Nichan like to garden, remember? The Demeter children all nodded at the correct identification of the flowers. But Katie spoke up and had a question that was given no answer. Artemis does gardening. The girl had enough decency to look sheepish at that, since he had even gone to her family shop on several occasions to buy certain plants and had even helped him with his not-so-little rooftop garden herself once. Right, sorry, she mumbled as she dropped her gaze and they headed out. Ino was still shocked on how much she was learning about her enigmatic blonde teammate. Ever since her first few weeks of going to the academy, she had always seen Naruto as a lazy, inattentive, hyperactive, loudmouthed idiot. AKA Percy Jackson. Meanwhile, Achu, bless you. Thanks. Now back to the story. That was always causing trouble and so had naturally paid very little attention. Percy again, could it be possible that Naruto is Percy in another life? Or the opposite being true? An Apollo child who was confused looked to the person on his left. It's a story, sunshine. Let it go, hissed the unclaimed to the son of Apollo. To him other than to use his crush on Sakura as teasing ammo against the Pinkett. Now that she was literally forced to spend time with him, however, she found the true meaning of the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover." Sure, Naruto was still a hyperactive knucklehead that tended to be overly exuberant, but he wasn't as stupid as she had thought. He just had trouble understanding things at first and sometimes needed it dumbed down a bit. Like most demigods these days, Chiron sighed as his mind pulled up memories of the terrible grades the last few decades of demigods have had. Athena's children were outliers most of the time. He was also quite perceptive when it came to fighting, quickly coming up with on-the-fly and somewhat crazy plans that would somehow work, most of the time. Poseidon would be proud, as would Ares. Athena not so much. Chiron tipped a goblet to drink his refreshment at the book. There were also the more sensitive things she had learned about him, such as the fact he was an orphan during said visit to his garden. That was something she really should have known already, given she had been in the same class as him for a few years now and she had never once seen any form of parental figure with him, but like previously stated, she had never actually bothered to pay attention to him. It had also explained his lack of social skills and childish mannerisms, since she doubted anyone had actually taken the time to teach him better. Boy, did she feel like a bitch after that, remembering all the times she had mocked him both openly and behind his back for such things. Especially when she figured that Artemis was most likely a result of his desperation towards having some kind of family, even if it was just imaginary. Pollux and Connor nodded their heads with their father. It was a logical conclusion for her to come to, even if it was incorrect. It was made a bit better when she met Shizune though, when the apprentice stopped by to make sure he was taking his meds, some kind of sleep aids. Thanks to Apollo as a way to get back at Hypno's children because they couldn't stay awake for the late-night Blue concert. A son of the sun god grunted out. Ino was broken out of her thoughts as the Ninja Academy came into sight. Instead of walking in the main entrance though, the quartet took a left and headed towards a large doorway on the side that had a sign above it that said, Mission Hall. Stepping through, they were greeted by the third Hokage as he, Iruka, and a couple of other ninja that they didn't know, sorting through various scrolls and documents. Walking up to Iruka, Asuma handed him the scroll from earlier before turning towards Hiruzen with a slightly stiff bow. Mission completed, sir, and ready for a debrief on that C rank I had requested yesterday. Nodding his head, the elderly Kage took a deep draw from his pipe while pulling out a scroll with the kanji for C rank across it in bold and handed it over. Your mission is a joint mission with Team 9 to the land of Kanoko. The ruling body there, Princess Momo, has asked for assistance in dealing with her country's overpopulation of turtles. No, it can't be, Mr. D muttered before giving a tiny smile. Unnerved, the campers closest to the god shuffled over the annoyance of their seatmates. Seriously, Gigi? Naruto asked with a deadpan, ignoring the light slap Ino gave him for speaking informally. You're sending us to go hunt turtles? The hunters all either snorted or giggled, much to the confusion of the campers. It was Kowalski who calmed down enough to explain that turtles were one of the hardest animals to hunt, as the nymphs were rather protective of the shelled animals. Not to mention the ones they hunted were all related to Shalone in some way or the monster pet of Siren, making them harder to kill. Well, that was the original plan, but someone had other ideas. Hiruzen said with a sigh as he pinched the bridge of his nose. Before Naruto could ask him what he meant, the door behind them suddenly slammed open. Looking back to see what the cause was, Naruto recoiled slightly at the sight of a tall muscular man wearing a skin-tight green jumpsuit with orange leg warmers with a bowl haircut and the biggest pair of eyebrows he had ever seen in his life. Cabin 10 led the screams of horror at the sight, with the hunters grimacing from the sound. They had too much pride to admit that the Mont's outfit was terrible. Yosh. Team 9 reporting for their duty of youthful saving the poor turtles of their most unyouthful fate, Hokage-sama. The man yelled exuberantly while marching into the room, followed by an equally excited mini version of himself. It reproduced. A horrific son of love cried out in terror. Destroy that abomination. His nearest sister yelled out. Oi, if you don't be quite ill, curse the lot of you to look that way for a week. Mr. D snapped at the whining members of Cabin 10 who shut up after that threat. An exasperated girl with her hair done up in 2 buns, and a stoic Hyuga boy whose twitching eyebrow was the only sign of his annoyance. Sigh, hello Guy-san, glad to see you're so excited to get going. There has been a slight change of plans, however, Hiruzen said, getting the now-named guy to calm down slightly. Asuma and Team 10 will joining you on your mission as a way to get themselves acquainted to missions outside the village. I assume you don't mind, correct? Of course not, Hokage-sama. This just means I have the opportunity to help fan the flames of youth in these young genin alongside my own. Guy yelled, while his mini-me cheered and the bun girl sighed in defeat. We feel you, those two are like demigods during a birthday party on sugar highs. Tay demigods grumbled at the kitchen staff's correct assessment. Connor spoke up with a twitching brow. But we don't run around in bright green jumpsuits yelling youth. No, but you do scream about how unfair the gods are. No one disputed Mr. D's statement. Good to hear. Off you go then, you have 2 hours to get ready before needing to depart. the Hokage said with a dismissive wave of his hand, getting the 8 to leave. Once the door closed behind them, the elderly leader turned to Iruka with a raised eyebrow. Not going to complain about them not being ready like you did with Team 7. No sir, he said while continuing to sort through scrolls. Because unlike Team 7, you're at least sending this team off with a more experienced team as support. I guess that is fair enough. So why don't we send a team of experienced campers with inexperienced ones to keep an eye on them? Because the insurance rates would kill the budget, Chiron. Then there is the traditional 3 that keeps bad luck from affecting the outcome of the quest. With teams 9 and 10. Alright you 3, since this will be your first mission out of the village, each of you will have a member of Guy's team to help you get ready. Asuma said before grunting as Guy patted him roughly on the back. An excellent idea, my youthful comrade. Guy yelled boisterously with a laugh. Lee, you go with the young lady. The mini-me saluted with a cry of Yosh. Before running off while a shivering Ino followed. Phoebe shivered. Shopping with Cabin 10 would be less painful. Neji, you help the big-boned lad. The Hyuga scoffed with a reluctant nod of his head as he marched off with Choji in tow. And Tenten, you'll. I get it, come on Blondie, the bun girl said with a roll of her eyes while grabbing Naruto's arm and dragging him off. We're going to my family's shop. Why? Naruto asked after pulling himself out of her grip with a grunt. To get you properly equipped, those empty sheets aren't exactly going to intimidate anyone you know. Tenten stated while pointing to said sheets around his waist. Oh, but I already got that covered, Naruto said while summoning the dancing lunar blades into their holsters with a flash of silver light. At the same time, he pulled out the scroll he kept his bow and quiver and unsealed them for her to see. See, I drew oi, he exclaimed when the brunette swiped the daggers and began looking them over critically. Hey, no wiping another Mon's weapon, Sherman Yong yelled out. You don't do that if you're not fighting. These are amazing. Tenten muttered in awe, giving the blades a few test swings. Perfectly balanced, no visible flaws, honed to just the right sharpness. Dad's work no doubt, Beckendorf smugly said with pride. And not yours, Naruto cut in with annoyance as he unsummoned the knives with another flash and resealed his bow. Ain't you ever heard of personal property before, hey? The boy yelled as Tenten grabbed him by the shoulders, hoisted him up to eye level, and pulled him uncomfortably close to her face. Where did you get those weapons? Who made them? Tell me, she demanded excitedly. Instead of verbally answering, Naruto frowned deeply with a twitching eyebrow before tilting his head back and harshly ramming his forehead into hers. Gah. Thick head, Nico thought to himself in observation before moving on. Why is every girl I meet so freaking weird, Datbeo? Naruto thought to himself as he landed back on his feet, watching the dazed girl carefully as she recovered. I would normally be insulted by that, if I wasn't wondering the exact same thing. Artemis admitted with a sigh. Same, came the voices of all the females listening to the story. Just what was with the women Naruto met? Ow, 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 what is your skull made out of? Tenten asked slightly groggily while rubbing the rapidly growing red spot on her forehead. Shaking her head a few times to clear the ringing still echoing in her head, she looked back at the still annoyed-looking blonde and smiled a little sheepishly. Sorry about that, weapons are my specialty and sometimes I can get a little overly excited. So, Athena or Ares? Travis asked. Hopefully Hephaestus. I doubt she would have survived the fashion disaster Terror clones otherwise. A nymph stated as she sighed in memory of the god when she met him in passing. No kidding, Naruto deadpanned, making the bun-haired girl laugh awkwardly. Whatever, let's just get going, he said before gesturing for her to take the lead again. So does your shop happen to sell arrows? Only the best, I'll be the judge of that. D snorted. Artemis and Apollo still lose in crafting arrows to Smithy. Why else do they use his works? Please go on Taco. Nico. Whatever. Please read as I go over the reviews for chapter 6. For some reason some fool is thinking they can make the god of madness insane. So scatter y'all lot. More tonight after chores, training and dinner. Nico stared at the god before passing the book off to the side for someone else to read it. All around him campers, hunters and the various staff members all stretched their legs as they began to wander off to do their tasks. Soon the only ones left were Chiron, Mr. D, Leto and Hestia who was tending the hearth. It was Letty who spoke up first. So, my little Artie is freed from the one she's trapped in. So it will seem, makes it easier for one of us or father to free her from the brat. Mr. D. Naruto was innocent in all this, forced by Artemis' need to hide and recover from the suffering she underwent. A frigid-toned Chiron abolished the god's words. D waved him off. That's not important and you know it, Chiron. If Artemis doesn't come back because of having sentimental feelings towards Naruto, father will end the boy's life in an instant. He cannot be allowed to break the might of Olympus when all-out war is coming, a victim circumstance or not. Perhaps this fate can be avoided or at least perhaps my son can shed some light on this. Leto, was that a pun? Hestia asked as she took a log and tossed it in. Leto tittered. An unintentional one. Mr. D paid the female immortals no more attention as he looked over the reviews. All 13 of them. Sighing, he began sending replies to the ones he felt deserved a response. To the simple one-liner reviewers. Are you being lazy? Yes, this is a good story, but add some emotion or energy to your reviews. I am talking to you lot of reviewers. Monster King, JC 375884, Surya 25 Adanki, Jeremiah Kelly 93, 22C 6 Fic Love. At least Samuel Santillan sounded like he liked it. The god tapped his chin and went on. Within myself, the review was good, but really. Moments. Details are needed, else like in winemaking, the overarching idea is lost. I didn't see any issue, so please, why would Perry Johnson have his own world? Also, Rio Skyron, your attempt was rather poor. I am the master of madness. That should make them miserable. With that done, Mr. D left to have his afternoon nap and soaps. Apollo was many things in his immortal life. Handsome shining beacon of inspiration for the arts, a well-versed connoisseur of the ladies, killer of snakes. But there was one thing alone that made him proud among all others, being the younger twin brother of Artemis. Yes, he calls himself the oldest, as it always irked his sister, but that was good sibling rivalry. While he looked over the land during the day, his sister ruled the Nyx-covered lands at night. That meant he could indulge himself in the ladies even if it meant his sister taking pop shots at him. But this evening he wasn't looking for a new fling. Instead, he was sitting by a trash can dressed as a hobo, waiting for the hunters and campers to come seeking a ride to the west. Sighing, he looked in on where the group was. Seeing they were 10 minutes away, he once more attempted to see where his sister was. Any luck? Apollo jumped up, in a manly way, and that's his story, as he did not squeal like a balloon losing air, and turned around. Mom. Oh, don't mom me, my little baby boy, Leto said happily as she pulled Apollo into a bear hug, ignoring his attempts to break free. How's my little bitty sweetie baby Appy? Mother, please. Apollo whined, begged his mother as he blushed. I am not a baby. Leto smiled and kissed her son's head. You'll always be my baby boy, no matter how long you've been immortal. Now, Mommy needs her little sunny son to pay attention to what Mommy has to say to her boy. Apollo groaned but related even as his mother held him. Struggling would be useless against his mother. Thinking that his mom just needed her son because she was worried about Artemis, he knew that escaping would just upset her. It couldn't be that bad, right? The next reader is Greenshade, Chiron declared, making the dryad cheer in happiness to the polite clapping sent her way. Picking up the book, she began to read. I'll admit, these are some very high-quality arrows, Artemis said as Naruto twirled one of his newly purchased arrows between his fingers as he walked towards the front gate of Konoha. Yeah, they're certainly better than the ones you and me have been making, Naruto thought, sticking the arrow back into his quiver. What can I say? I am the hunter, Hephaestus was the forger, the moon goddess said with a shrug. Also why we buy arrows in bulk during our visits to camp when we don't have any daughters of Hephaestus with us or he's busy with other projects, Phoebe said before Kowalski sheepishly took out a sheet of paper. Yeah, we'll be needing about the usual order of 5,000 regular silver-tipped arrows this time, she said as she passed the list to Chiron, who shook his head as he took the order. Sorry. No need to be sorry. At least the bunk purchasing helps fund the camp while giving the campers experience. The extra silver was very helpful during the werewolf attacks 2 decades ago. Sure, she could make arrows of her own when needed, but they would pale in quality to a true blacksmith's work. I just hope that discount you managed to negotiate was worth it, she said dully, earning herself a mental glare. Don't you me, it was your idea, Naruto thought with a sigh as he looked towards his walking companion. Tenten was completely oblivious to her surroundings as she examined several of Naruto's trick arrows at once with sparkles in her eyes. With Artemis' help, the blonde had managed to convince the bun girl to give him half off in exchange for those arrows, the schematics on how to make them when they got back, and a few archery lessons, since a bow was one of the few weapons she wasn't proficient in yet. She's probably as Athena's gal. Says here she doesn't know her mother, Greenshade said before another discussion on parentage began. It doesn't say anything about her family, and speculation about possible demigods is a pain. Why not a demi-dryad? Really, 'cause I distinctly remember you asking me for help on buying them. I asked how many we should get since we didn't have much money. You're the one who suggested we try and get a discount. Damn it, Artemis grumbled when she realized she didn't have a counter-argument for that, while Naruto smirked victoriously. And that's why Artemis is swindled by Hermes every 50 years. Mr. D, please remember that I have only limited ability to convince the hunters to hold back with the Hydra venom-tipped arrows. Before she had a chance to come up with one, the trio finally arrived at their destination, the massive gates that acted as the main entrance to Konoha, where the rest of both their teams were standing. Connor gave a whistle in awe. Okay, that's better than the elevator. Cutting it a bit close, aren't you? We leave in 1 minute, Asuma said, being the first to spot the pair approaching. Sorry Entatsu-sensei, we got a little sidetracked, Naruto said blandly while glancing at Tenten, who had broken out of her little fangirl moment at last and quickly hid the arrows behind her with an innocent grin. Ares, Athena and Hephaestus demigods all blushed under the eyes around them. It wasn't their fault they loved a good crafted weapon. I see, Asuma said after a brief pause as he followed Naruto's gaze before shaking the odd sight off, besides had seen otter. By odd what does he mean? Greenshade, does the book say anything? Greenshade looked over the next few pages before shrugging. There is only a footnote here, something about Naruto doing a prank before meeting Artemis. That's all. She looked around. Okay, who asked? Hestia snickered as the tree nymph looked around spooked. She loved throwing her voice to scare people every once in a while. Sometimes Hades would let her borrow his helmet to scare a mortal who had irked her for giggles. Such a sweet brother who got extra cookies of his favorite for tea time. And did you make sure to grab your meds? Ada-sensei, Naruto said with a roll of his eyes as he fished out a small orange bottle from his pocket for the man to see, neither of them seeing Neji's narrowed eyes as he saw this out of the corner of his eye. Good, guy, we're ready to go. Asuma called to his fellow Jonin. Yosh, that's great. Now we can show the people of Kanoko our flames of youth. The spandex-wearing man yelled as he and Lee charged through the front gates, crackle literally. Okay, who let the mortal drink Hermes-grade coffee? Asked Mark. Kami, damn it, guy. Asuma groaned as he, Neji, Tenten, and the two guards standing by the gate palmed their faces at the gaping hole the excited duo had left behind before the two teams swiftly followed after the excited duo. Be ready for a rough few days, you three. Guy loves to make things into impromptu training sessions. Asuma-san, let us test how well your team is doing stamina-wise. Well, cut down the journey from 4 days to 2 with the power of youth. He's crazy and I am the son of the Lord of Madness. Castor said aloud, making his father smile. Just like that, Asuma finished with a deadpan as a strong feeling of dread filled the three genin. Meanwhile, one of the two guards raised his hand up to his ear with a sigh. This is Izumo, we have a code green, again. So this is the little story time that D has been doing. Greenshade and everyone else looked up to see a neutral-faced Apollo and Leto walking down the path. The sun god yawned as he took a seat next to Chiron and his brother with Phoebe on the other side. Mr. D bunched. Yep, Phobia Hunter here wanted to read to the camp instead of watching reruns of classical shows. As the two brothers engaged in small talk, a young nymph passed Apollo a goblet of nectar as well as Leto as the Titan sat down. Seeing it would be a while, she waved the Dryad to continue, otherwise the story would be on pause for fates know how long. 2 days later. So tired, my legs are killing me, Naruto groaned, sweat pouring off of him as he trudged up a hill. Just like Guy had said, he had the two teams sprint the entire way while only stopping a handful of times to rest. It was only made worse as Naruto and Artemis' combined competitive nature made them keep pushing regardless. The campers blinked as all the hunters facepalmed. Hunter 9 cleared her throat to clarify. Artemis, Athena and Nike. 1920 Olympic Games. It was messy. I know, isn't it, so youthful? Lee asked from beside the blonde, looking a bit better for wear but still pretty tired. Behind them Neji, Tenten, and Choji were badly winded themselves, but not nearly as badly since they had paced themselves better. Finally, Ino had straight up passed out about an hour ago and was being carried by a still deadpanning Asuma while a sheepish guy rubbed the back of his head. I may have gone a little overboard with this youthful exercise. The spandex-wearing man admitted with a chuckle as everyone but Lee gave him a glare that screamed no shit. Why does he have caterpillar eyebrows? That jumpsuit. My eyes. I can't unsee it. Dramatic much, Apollo? Mr. D asked half-heartedly as he calmly wiped peanut butter on his toast. But on the bright side, we're here already, he said while gesturing to the town that came into view as the group reached the top of the hill. Welcome to Imoka, capital of the land of Kanoko and home of the best mushroom industry in all of the elemental nations. Said town was moderately sized, consisting of hundreds of houses with either red or green roofs. Chiron blinked. Pallet Town. I don't think we're doing a story crossover with Pokemon today, Chiron. Although I'll see if anything is in the works. An amused Leto sipped her drink. But I do admit it does look like Pallet Town. With a small castle made of white marble with bright red roofing situated in the middle. The land outside the town was littered with dozens of farms that were filled with hundreds of varieties of mushrooms in a large forest. Mario's theme song started playing in panpipe form from a group of satyrs Grover's age, making Apollo hum in approval. Guy, you and your team take Ino and get some hotel rooms booked for the night. The rest of us will go and speak with Princess Momo to inform her that we have arrived. The smoker said while handing the passed-out girl over to the exuberant man. Damn, she's worse than Cabin 10. Travis called out only to gasp for breath as his clothes shrunk around his windpipe. Did you hear something, dear sister? Selena asked her smiling sister. Oh, nothing more than a strange breeze. I wonder what will happen next in the story, Greenshade. You got it, Asuma-san, then we can get on with our most youthful mission of saving those innocent turtles. Enough with the youth already. It's as bad as these demigods saying gods all the time is a curse or cry for help. Also, those reptiles killed poor Aeschylus. Now there was an artist. Dude, RL Frust of all art is my gig. Secondly, Aeschylus' talents should have been credited to me, the god of the arts. You say something, Apo, Guy said with a wide grin, restraining himself from yelling not to disturb Ino as she slept. With their plan decided, the two teams marched into Imoka at a sedate pace. While they walked, the farmers working in the field stopped to stare at the new arrivals, each of them wearing protective straw hats that were painted red with white spots. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, Artemis said suddenly, making Naruto jump slightly in surprise. Is something wrong, Ardini-chan? He asked in confusion. This entire place reminds me way too much of a game my brother Apollo would make me play with him whenever he dragged me along for family night. Artemis said, her eyes narrowed in mild suspicion. Oh, they are so much fun when she brings her hunters and Apollo his children. It gets so lively then every 100 years. I do love having Artemis' adopted daughters visiting. Last time they came, if you recall, Apollo, your sister, yelled at me for making her hunters too full of cake and ice cream for the archery show they were supposed to do for me. The hunters blushed and muttered excuses while the campers who snickered at their embarrassment. What could they say? They were spoiled under Leto's care. The mushroom theme, the red spotted hats, the castle, the turtle problem, even the princess name for Zeus' sake. All that's missing are overly large green pipes and a short plumber wearing a red hat and blue overalls. Ten says Naruto and her end up looking like Mario and Luigi. Nico called out. Soon other campers, satyrs, nymphs, and hunters were in on that action, including the gods. Okay, Naruto thought as he cautiously put some mental distance between himself and the ranting goddess while noting as Guy and his team broke off to find a hotel once they entered the actual town. Great, Artie's going nuts again. Only took several thousand years of man-hating, then stuck with that boy for years on end. D thought to himself as he yawned. Snapping his fingers, he got another Coke. I heard that. Oh, Kuso, bye, Naruto thought hurriedly as he popped his focus back into the real world. You okay there, Squirt? Asuma asked when he saw the spooked expression on the blonde's face. Huh, oh, yeah, Ardini-chan just wants out soon. Naruto lied nervously, not wanting to make the goddess inside his gut any angrier. A dryad yipped as her dress caught on fire momentarily but was put out by a nymph next her. Hestia eyed her nephew who was steaming at Naruto, calling Artemis Ardini-chan. It was his nickname. I know that tone, wonder what he did to piss her off. Asuma thought while pretending to buy the blonde's excuse. Alright then, you can let her out once we officially get started on the mission. But you'll have to explain her presence to Team 9. You got it, Entatsu-sensei. Naruto said reluctantly, getting an encouraging pat on the shoulder from the man as he brought a cigarette up to his lips. As much as secrecy was a ninja's best friend, the blonde's condition wasn't something that you could just spring on your comrades. It was better for him to get it out now rather than them accidentally stumble on it and come up with the wrong conclusion. I can imagine how that would go over. Malcolm snickered before clearing his throat. Hey guys, so apparently there's this goddess who appeared one day who infused into me, making me unable to sleep at night but allows me the honored rights to be her vessel and filled with knowledge and power. Everything is fine. How long has she been inside of him? Apollo asked nervously. Months so far as we know. Why? He answered, a little lost on the reasoning. Oh, carry on, Greenshade, and if I may, your voice is beautiful. Ever thought of starting a singing or acting career? Drop dead, Apollo. I am immortal Greenie, but I have been dead not to have said hello in your presence. Choji was content to remain silent as he happily munched away on a kebab of roasted mushrooms that had bought from a stand as they were walking. It only took a few minutes to arrive at the center of Imoka where the castle was and were approaching the front gates when a man in his late 30s, likely a guard based on his armor and weapons, got in their path. Halt, strangers. Who are you and why do you approach the home of the royal family? Easy there. We're shinobi from Konohagakure. We're here to fulfill a mission request sent by Princess Momo. Asuma said, pulling out the mission scroll and unrolling it for the guard to see the signature on the bottom. Hopefully there's wolves, a son of Ares stated. A daughter of Athena looked at him with a look of confusion. He groaned at the look. Princess Momo, similar to Princess Mononoke, the Studio Ghibli movie. No, just no. Looking at it closely, the guard remained silent for several moments before nodding his head in approval and stepping back to his original position. That's my lady's handwriting all right. The throne room is straight ahead. Don't cause any trouble. Said everyone that got into trouble anyway. Chiron bemoaned as memories of demigods who did so after being especially told not to came to bear in his mind. You got it, guard-san. Asuma said with a bow as he and the two genin passed him. As the trio walked down the marble-tiled pathway, Naruto and Artemis couldn't help but admire the gardens they passed along the way. While they weren't stuffed to the brim with exotic and rare plants like one would expect with most royalty, the few that were there were clearly well taken care of alongside the various local and common species. The nature spirits and Demeter's children smiled in approval for what they saw. This princess has a good taste. I always hated those overly extravagant messes that royalty called gardens. Artemis said as they reached the main entrance, a large reinforced wooden door with a stained glass window depicting a blonde woman wearing a pink dress with a sun in the background. Even Aphrodite found most of them to be obnoxious and her entire temple was entirely hot pink. That sounds like it would be painful to look at, Naruto thought, his eyes squinting slightly just imagining such a thing. You don't have to live with sisters who won't change the color scheme. You know Marion, you'll look good in hot pink. Perhaps we should help you with a new wardrobe for the summer. Selena snickered as her sister teased their brother. I am sure Mom will be willing to help you look fashionable as well as heartbreaking. Anything but that. It is, but not nearly as bad as Apollo's. He made his entirely out of gold and has it waxed every 6 hours. Artemis said with a grimace. If even a single tiny ray of light strikes that building, the whole thing lights up almost as bright as his chariot. A menace. Dee growled at multiple times. That scenario happens, ruining a perfectly good miserable day. And she's one to talk with her silver temple. Right, because he is the god of the sun and all that jazz. Naruto thought with a roll of his eyes. I don't like him. Apollo. Mom. He stole my pet name for sis and now he's mocking my temple and status. Apollo. Yes mother, stupid Naruto. Unknowingly upsetting one of the guards as he entered the castle while another spoke with his sensei. After yet another sewing of the mission scroll, they were allowed to pass and one of the guards led them inside. Believe what you want, you'll soon see the truth of my words once I am out of this. Oh that's it, this is just getting ridiculous. Artemis suddenly said mid-sentence as they passed through the main hall and finally arrived at the throne room. Said throne was raised several feet above them, made of a polished golden bronze with plush red cushions. The reason for the goddess' annoyance, however, was of the young woman currently seated upon the expensive chair. She looked to be in her mid-teens and was wearing a dark pink kimono with white highlights, a small golden necklace with a large sapphire in the middle, and a tiny cup-sized crown situated slightly crookedly on her head as she sat slightly slouched. Her hair reached down to her back in long messy locks of gold that gave Naruto's a run for its money, while her eyes were a soft baby blue that held a look of boredom until they locked onto the newcomers. Oh come on, yelled a satyr. No fair. Why does that bastard get to meet her IRL? A Hermes son shouted. Praise or curse, praise or curse, praise or curse, mantra chanted Apollo in his head. Glancing up at the engraved headbands on their foreheads, a smile crossed her lips and she quickly sat up. Oh my, you wouldn't happen to be the ninjas I asked for already? She asked, her voice soft with a slight musical quality to it. That we are, Princess Momo. I am Asuma and these are two of my students Naruto and Choji. Asuma said as he bowed with Choji following his example while Naruto simply waved tiredly with a big smile, getting the princess to blink in surprise before giggling slightly as Choji pulled her fellow blonde into a bow. Growls and growling eyes came from many single male camper and satyrs in camp in infuriated rage at the unfairness of the situation. Though most of our group is currently in town finding us a place to stay for the night. Ah yes, wouldn't want you all sleeping out in the cold after all. Momo said with a nod. He should. A single male camper yelled out. Yeah, came the resounding chorus of single boys and a few girls. Though I must admit that I am surprised at your presence, my courier said not to expect you for another day at least. I see that the tales of Konoha's high service quality isn't exaggerated as much as I thought. We do aim to please, your highness. Asuma said with a shrug, getting the princess to giggle again. If it isn't too much of a bother though, would you mind giving us a more detailed explanation of the assignment you've hired us for? The mission request just said you needed help dealing with an overpopulation of turtles. Of course, Momo said with a nod of her head. In this country, the turtle is revered for its strong yet peaceful nature. So much so that if we weren't already known as the land of Kanoko, we would certainly be called the land of Kame. It is even a bit of a tradition for families to have at least one turtle living with them in their home. And I am guessing because of this worship, the turtles were overprotected and ended up breeding out of control. Asuma asked, only to blink in mild surprise when the princess shook her head. Chiron shook his head. It would be too easy if it were. Oh and nay bin 2012, who's gonna stop me? Chiron, Apollo, Phoebe and Leto stared at Mr. D with lost expressions on their faces. Are you still answering reviews? Leto asked. Yep, now with my trademark naming scheme. Totally not ripping off someone else. No, my people are well aware of the possible damage that could be done to our ecosystem from such recklessness after an incident like that 20 years ago. That is why hunting in correct amounts is so important. Too much and the ecosystem collapses. Too little and the forest suffers. Hunter 7 said. Blah blah blah, don't kill Bambi and Thumper. Boring. An Aries kid yelled out. Only for her sibling to speak up. I love Bambi though. How are we related to Dad again? Mom was an eco-warrior and smashed his bike, then used a log trap to bust his balls cause he called Bambi stupid. He said as if discussing the weather. Oh, besides, turtle meat is our second best export, she said with a shrug before returning to proper posture. Campers and some nature spirits turned green while his hunters and the harpies looked on amused. Seeing this as an opportunity, Mr. D made sure to address the common reviews about this section of the reading. Most campers weren't committed or comfortable with the idea of eating a turtle. Americans, even with their diverse tastes from many cultural backgrounds, limit their ideas of what should or shouldn't be eaten because of their perceived norms. In the time I was a demigod, turtle meat was a most natural source of protein and nutrition. What is considered to be Eastern cultural norms of eating this reptile is biased, as turtle meat had been a part of the human diet in most corners of the world. It is only the inaccessibility and the idea of turtles being pets did the West declare it wrong. D, are you sure you want to post that? As a side note, Apollo, who is scared of being eaten as a turtle, made sure to promote their protection as he still likes turning into one. It was one time with Dryope. Also, they are cool and fun to watch. Then how did you end up with your current problem? At this question, Momo sighed deeply while rubbing her forehead. That would be thanks to one of my more zealous advisors, Kemek. She said in an annoyed tone. That old goat was obsessed with continuing with the old ways, always ranting on how the gods would have their revenge and such. He only calmed down slightly when I granted him a patch of land on the outskirts of Amoka to act as his own turtle sanctuary a year ago. But, Asuma added as the young woman sighed again. But he went too far. Somehow that fool managed to both collect and breed several thousand turtles on the property in a short time. As she spoke, Momo signaled to a servant across the room who promptly brought a small envelope that he handed to Asuma. Checking its contents, the smoking man let out a low whistle at the series of pictures inside showing literal rivers of turtles waddling across barren ground. Ares would be in paradise with his new tank. Apollo deadpanned along with everyone else. Well, all but one, as Mr. D was trying to think of a response to what Babalu 2010 said about a different pantheon goddess burning his ass. Finding none, he instead went to THR next on his list. Dear T.O. Ryaruns, whatever do you mean? We only found out a week ago when Kemek passed away from a heart attack and the critters spread out in search of food. My people have been trying to deal with the problem, but there are just too many of them and it's the middle of harvest season. Limiting your manpower even more and thus leading you to hire us. Asuma finished for the princess, getting her to nod. Well then, worry no more, your highness. Me and my companions will be sure to make short work of this little issue. Thump, though we will apparently have to wait until tomorrow to start. Asuma said with a chuckle as he looked down at Naruto's snoozing form, the whiskered boy's exhaustion having finally caught up to him. It would appear so, Momo said, a hand rising up to her lips as she giggled at the sight. Might I take over answering reviews in the next chapter? Phoebe asked Mr. D, who shrugged in reposance. The next day, right as we have no idea time passes. Taco don't shark at the narrator. Be like lobster fling, he's staying calm. Who? The giant staring into the world via a screen beyond the fourth wall. I call it, the fifth wall. Apollo looked at his mom rubbing his head. I think I prefer him drunk than a conspiracy theorist. 711, 712, 713, 714, man, there really is no end to these guys, is there? Naruto asked rhetorically as he picked up a small brownish green turtle with red stripes around its eyes, petting its head while he placed it in the barrel that was strapped to his hip. The midday sun streamed through the leaves of the trees as he hunched over as he trudged through the marshy area he was in. That there, Artemis agreed from about 2 feet to his left, scratching at the chain sticking out the back of her neck in mild annoyance as she swiftly scooped several of the reptiles up at once with the other without stopping, her oddly enough bare feet sinking a bit into the muddy ground. Is that normal? An unclaimed demigod asked Kowalski, who shrugged. Why can't I have any regular people as friends? Tenten wondered. Boring. She should really met the party ponies or the Maenads. Then she'll be fixed. That are traumatized for life, but she's still going after being with that weirdo. As she placed a trio of filled buckets on the back of a tortoise that was half as tall as she was before, both vanished in a puff of smoke. After a good night's rest, Guy and Asuma had come up a simple but effective plan to finish the mission. They divvied everyone up into 3 groups, Choji and Ino with Lee, Neji with Guy and Asuma, and Naruto with Tenten. Then, Guy gave both the other groups temporary summon scrolls for his tortoise contract to use to transport the turtles away from their unyouthful doom. When the bun girl questioned why only she was being teamed up with the whiskered blonde, Naruto had reluctantly revealed Artemis' existence with some encouragement from said goddess and his sensei. Naturally, some members of Team 9 Neji refused to believe him at first, at least they did until Naruto created a shadow clone and Artemis possessed it. After recovering from their shock, and staring at the duo for an uncomfortably long time with an active Byakugan, the group reacted accordingly. Watch the gaze pale eyes. My baby girl is too good for you. Mother. Guy had patted Naruto on the back, accidentally causing the boy to faceplant with the floor, and yelled something about having double the flames of youth, not really affected as he had already known of the boy's condition with doing pretty much the same. Dear us, a male Artemis. Aphrodite will have a seizure. Apollo do something. Why me? Because if your sister makes Naruto a male version of her dearest daddy might make him the god of virgins. Then APH will raid my stocks of alcohol to drink away her frustration with the inclusion of yet another immortal virgin. And then with his looks as a mini you shall think of him as the brother she never had, stealing your place. Mr. D said with a crazy look on his eyes. Apollo paled and snapped his head towards the book in horror. Quickly, I need to make sure he isn't a virgin. You know if he is and loses it like Artemis is inside if him the fates may take her status as a virgin, goddess, Phoebe paled in realization. No, we must preserve Naruto's virginity for Our Lady's sake. With that tidbit Apollo was shaking his in-seat while his brother snickered in his head about Apollo's dilemma. Neji had huffed and muttered something about fate and losers before going back to his regular stoicism, though Artemis noted the way he always kept her within his peripherals. Tenten on the other hand had simply gained a look of resignation as she realized that yet another person she was to associate with was not as normal as she hoped. Still, at least this beats Guy and Lee's constant youth moments. She thought with a shiver as she grabbed an empty barrel and got back to work. Hunter H shivered. Better than Apollo's limericks or his newfound fascination with haikus. Oh really Miss Jane? Snap. What was that snap for? Limericks haikus are bad. This is terrible, Jane said before glaring at the god of poetry. Sun god's days are slow. Gentle breeze sparrow flies. Arrow to his head. Matt, can't take you as threatening with that bad haiku. She growled. It is a good day. Apollo castration soon. Golden ichor flows. I can see why these guys are such popular pets. Naruto said, smiling as he carefully picked up a baby turtle barely bigger than his thumb was wide. They are kinda cute. They are. Hey Selena, want to go turtle watching? Beckendorf asked her, making her giggle and nod her head yes. Not all of them, Artemis grunted out while holding up an old turtle that was hissing and snapping viciously at her. Better toss that one, he might attack the others. Tenten said, getting a nod from the auburn girl who was moving to do just that when an ominous cracking noise made her and the others freeze. What was THAAAAAAAAAA? Naruto's question changed to a scream as the ground under his and Artemis suddenly collapsed, revealing a wide cavernous chamber underneath them. Naruto, Artemis, Tenten cried out in shock as she saw the two suddenly vanish into the earth, swiftly followed by a heavy crash, a pair of pained cries, and a puff of smoke signaling Artemis dispelling. Please don't be an abandoned celestial bronze mine like in the 19th century again. Chiron moaned. Rushing to the edge of the newly formed hole, the bun-haired girl couldn't help but wince at the sight of Naruto's half-buried form. OWWWWWW, hey Ten-chan, I think I found something. Naruto groaned in pain, but still lucid enough thankfully to take notice of the fact that that cavern wasn't naturally made. Not unless computers, cages, and light fixtures grew underground. Hold on Naruto, I'll go signal the others real key IK. Tenten shrieked as she unfortunately got too close and the ground also crumbled under her before she could react. Crash. OWWWW. Sorry, and ended up landing right on Naruto. End chapter. Greenshade sighed in relieved as she finished the chapter. So, who wants to read next? Oh me, Apollo said excitedly snatching the book from her. And now let's see what Artie, Tenten and Barnto found. Naruto Apollo, not Barnto. That's what I said D. Barnto. Greenshade sighed in relief as she finished the chapter. So, who wants to read next? Oh me, Apollo excitedly said, snatching the book from her. And now let's see what Artie, Tenten and Barnto found. Naruto Apollo, not Barnto. That's what I said D. Barnto. Chiron cleared his throat. Ahem. Lord Apollo, perhaps you should hold off on the reading. The demigods need to sleep. Yells of dismay and calls for letting them stay up roared from the campers and hunters, but the trainer of heroes was having none of it. Stomping his hoof he leveled a look at the crowd that silenced them. Even Apollo looked upset. You know Sunshine, you could just read what we've read while they sleep. D pointed out as he picked up a wine magazine. I know. Sighing, Apollo picked up the book. If only there was some other way to pass the time. Hi everyone. Wow, I am pumping out these readings at a fast pace this month. Unusual for me I know, but what can I say? Inspiration struck. Anywho, I am here to answer some reviews with my assistant Hunter Phoebe. Say hi to everyone. What in the name of Hades is going on? Well, Hades isn't here, but you are on Answer That Review. Tell me, are you ready to answer some questions the readers have? I swear if this is another one of Dionysus and Hermes pranks I am going to. I'll take that as a yes. Zenko 13 said the following. Great chapter. What was the most interesting hunt with Artemis you have been on? I believe the second part is for you. Huh. Oh well, personally it was the hunt where I made my first solo attempt under my lady's eyes. I did. Anything special? Well, moving on. Hey. Akakiru said the following. Apollo, you think Artemis doesn't take Naruto with you? Have to think again. Tell me, will Naruto replace the sun god as her favorite? Muffled screams came echoing in the distance. Replace Apollo. He is a god. One that hits on you and your sister hunters. Touché. Naruto might be better. Less poetry that's designed to get stuck in the head. I see. Ready for another? Shoot. Alright. Gracias por el capítulo. Ya quiero ver la reacción de Phoebe y los dos cazadores al ver lo que pasará con Naruto. Creo que carrera sangre. That is from Shanxi, and I have to ask, do you think blood will flow like Shanxi suggested? Well, so far I don't think so. Maybe if he slips up, Artemis will put him in his place. By the way, does Shanxi know something I don't? Cough cough. Moving on. Thanks for the great chapter. I almost forgot about Mario memes. I can't wait to see their reactions to Naruto reward. Anything for Neo Infinity. Oh, did Artemis turn Naruto into a permanent female so Naruto can join the hunt? Sorry, but no spoilers. You know I can use this mic as a throwing dart. Moving on. Yuki Kruger 2 wants you to call Naruto the Ringing Blade if you're not calling him Maelstrom. No. Was that Apollo's? No. Oh. Rubs brow. I was sure. Okay. Want to answer more? Fine. Who's next? Ines 3. Well, that was fun. I gotta say though, I am liking the Cabin 10 kids much less, and I have no idea why. Still looking forward to Naruto's upcoming boss fight. Boss fight. Against what? Rip-offs of Apollo's drunken idea of Ninja Turtles named after Renaissance artists, one of which is not even one of the best but put in because Hera requested. I happen to like them. Right, and Ines 31, it's easy to dislike those love freaks. They're insufferable during Valentine's Day but not as bad as Diaper God. I'll have you know that they are. And we're done. Well guys and gals, hoped you enjoyed the review session with Phoebe. Till next time on Answer That Review. And now a word from our sponsors. Do you need a professional lawyer who knows the law? You need someone who is there in a flash with lightning results. Call Thunder Law today. Click. I swear TV ads get worse all the time. Mr. D yawned as he turned off the portal TV, looking over at Apollo the god of wine stretched. I don't care at all, but have you finished reading the last 8 chapters yet? It's already past dinner. Apollo looked up sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I've been done for the last 5 hours, but I didn't want to interfere with your show. Mr. D groaned and pinched his nose. The campers were preparing to riot and the hunters were helping plan an alternative way to get you to read, and you've been what? Rereading. It's a good read, Apollo excitedly said as he held up the book. Too bad it won't let me see the ending of it. Then perhaps you should read to the demigods of the camp and your twins cheer squad before Chiron proposes to Daddy to keep you here. I am sure with your experiences as a shepherd, demigods would be easy. Apollo glared at his younger brother. Hades, no. Read, yes. Chaperoning would only interfere with my plans for sightseeing. Then read. Apollo jumped as the area rung with the yells of irritated story wonders. Fine. Meanwhile, Phoebe was looking around in confusion. Did that just happen with me on a talk show, or am I going nuts? Chapter 9. OWWWWW. Hey Ten-chan, I think I found something. Naruto groaned in pain, but still lucid enough thankfully to take notice of the fact that that cavern wasn't naturally made. Not unless computers, cages, and light fixtures grew underground. Or you landed in one of Uncle Hades' sub-departments. Those poor accounts don't even know they're dead after being worked to death. Apollo wiped his eyes as he sniffed. Moving on. Wait, aren't you repeating the last chapter? Lee asked his dad, who ignored him. Hold on Naruto, I'll go signal the others real key IK. Tenten shrieked as she unfortunately got too close and the ground also crumbled under her before she could react. Crash. OWWWW. Sorry. And ended up landing right on Naruto. And now, finally, came the collective thoughts of the campers. Why can't I ever have anything I am doing go like planned? Is that too much to ask for just one time? Naruto wondered as he lay half buried in rock and a certain bun-haired girl currently using his gut as a landing pad. Athena might have something to do with that. Malcolm smirked at that comment made by his seatmate. She would. Are you alright Naruto? Tenten asked as she quickly climbed off her orange-garbed companion and began moving the rubble that he was partially buried in. Been better, Naruto said with a grimace, a small trickle of blood running down the side of his face from a cut on his forehead while one of his hands weakly held his stomach where the bun-haired girl landed. What about you Artene? Apollo dear, dial down the light please. No combustion of the camp and occupation of the mortals. Yes mom, mumbled Apollo as he retained control of his divine form. Annoyed but fine, the goddess of the hunt said huffed out, not happy about being sent back into her confinement prematurely. Mr. D scoffed at the notion. Now where in Tartarus are we? That's a good question, Naruto mumbled with a grunt as Tenten pulled him to his feet and he managed to get a good look at his surroundings. I don't remember annoying creepy underground rooms in the mission description. That's the life of a ninja for you. You should always expect the unexpected, Tenten said, getting Naruto to nod in agreement. As well as hunters and campers. Before they both turned their gazes to the ceiling at least 2 stories above them, or more specifically the hole they had fallen through. The ground is too unstable to go back that way, attempting so would most likely result in a cave-in. We'll have to find another way out, Artemis said through Naruto. Her words were punctuated by an ominous crumbling sounds followed by some small stones and dust falling from above. The nature spirits all shuddered at the notion of being underground. How did Groover stand it? Whispered one of the satyrs to another who just nibbled on a soda tossed by Mr. D. All right, I'll send a message to Kuso. Kuso who? Chiron stomped a hoof down hard. Mr. D. What? I didn't say shit. Tenten swore as she reached for the summoning scroll she'd been carrying, only to come up with a useless piece of ripped up parchment. Looks like we're on our own. Let's look around then. There should be another way out of here cause I am pretty sure that wasn't the front door. Naruto said while he dusted himself off, getting Tenten to laugh a little before they started to explore. Unfortunately for them, they never noticed the same grumpy turtle Artemis had been holding earlier wiggling helplessly upside down as a fluorescent green liquid from a broken test tube poured all over it. Dun dum dun dum dun dum. Connor, Travis, please no playing the drums during the reading. The twins frowned and put away the sticks but however beamed with the thumbs up Apollo sent them. As they looked around the place, all 3 of them kept their guards up in case there was any additional nasty surprises waiting for them. However, it didn't take long for their caution to be subsided by an overwhelming amount of intrigue and curiosity at what they were finding. Several computers were set up all over the place, either displaying large amounts of technical gibberish that none of them could make heads or tails of, or hooked up to large glass containment units that held several different types of reptiles such as lizards, snakes, and of course turtles. It looks like Athena's laboratory chamber during the scientific revolution when Darwin wrote his thesis on evolution. Hunter too shivered at the memory of Athena's more, uniquely inspired practices of the betterment and collection of wisdom. At least, some of them held those. The majority contained horribly deformed and disturbingly humanoid-looking and sized creatures or giant eggs as large as a child that were either half-hatched or dissected open to show the monstrosity within. Gods, a dryad whispered before hurling over the side. Artemis I hope will avenge them. Phoebe weakly stated. By Kami, who would do something like this? Tenten wondered, shivering as they passed by a particularly disgusting container. Its content looked like a horribly injured man who had 2 tiny hands bursting out of his stomach, a mouth that took up over half the face filled with dozens of jaded teeth, and 2 large limbs sticking out of its back that ended in large bone scythes. It looks like the time an Aries child played Drive. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in Victorian France. Apollo shivered as he looked over the images. I have no idea, and I pretty sure don't want to. Naruto said with a green face as he saw another man whose entire chest cavity, lower jaw, and stomach were missing and had a disfigured snake head for an arm. A Demeter girl shook her head. I know my snakes. Looks like a hydra head than a snake. I am just glad these things are dead. Each canister had a life support monitor and number ID on the side of it, with every single one flatlined. By Zeus, this place makes Hades Domain look like a spring paradise. Artemis muttered in, utterly horrified at the sick and demented twisting of life. I am guessing this was Kimake's doing. The princess said had been absolutely insistent on having the sanctuary set up and that no one but he go on it. And this just happens to be within the property limit. Tenten finished, getting what the goddess was getting at. He probably used the turtle fanaticism as a ruse to keep this place under wraps. But still, why would he do all of this? Something tells me we're not going to like the reason. Mark uttered as he looked away from one of the pictures with uneasiness. He might be a son of Ares but even he had a moral code of honor. Spotting something in the corner of his eye, Naruto turned his head towards the source before pointing. Maybe those will tell us. Looking in the direction he was gesturing to, Tenten found herself looking at a moderately sized alcove where a large workbench that was covered with various notebooks, papers, and a small glass box. That's convenient, too convenient, she said with narrowed eyes while reaching into her weapon pouch and pulling out a trio of kunai. Acting fast, she tossed them at the table before tackling a surprised Naruto behind a container holding a giant lizard with a human face. Smart. Athena's for sure as Ares would just spring the trap. Oh I am sorry but whose cabin leader triggered an obvious trap with a newbie? Oh that's right, Chase. Shut it. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Comma, 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 huh, guess it wasn't a trap after all. Tenten said as she lifted head up and looked through the glass to see that nothing had happened at all. That or it has a more complicated trigger mechanism, possible a pressure plater. Stared a timer to ease you into relaxing your guard for the trap to work and kill you. Nico piped up happily. Get off. Tenten was broken from her thoughts as she heard Naruto's muffled words under her. Remembering that she was still on top of the him, she glanced down to apologize while getting up, and rapidly developed a bright blush on her face. In her rush to avoid the trap she had expected to be triggered, the bun-haired had forgotten the fact that her companion was easily a head shorter than her, so when she tackled him to the ground the whiskered blonde ended up with an unexpected face full of developing teenage breasts. So, a camper started to ask the hunter she was closest to her, pervert. He gets a reprieve as it was her fault. Also Artemis is with him so she'll punish him if he was being one. Probably with nightmares of various means of castration. That's my moonshine for you. Leto rubbed her cheek with a fond smile. Must resist dirty thoughts, must resist dirty thoughts, Naruto repeated in his head desperately with a twitching eyebrow as Tenten quickly climbed off of him, only for his brain to keep replaying the moment and a small trickle of blood to run down one of his nostrils. Damn it. The hunters had one word to summarize the moment. Boys. If it wasn't for the fact I was in here, I would think you were somehow setting these accidents up somehow. Artemis said with a facepalm. Must be karma working on you sis. Ehem, sorry about that, let's just go look at what's on the table. Tenten said awkwardly, quickly changing the subject as she stood up hurried over to the said place. Yeah, sounds good, Naruto said, wiping his nose clean as he got back up and followed after her. Keep a cautious eye out for any possible traps. The duo approached the table where Tenten pulled her kunai free and put them away before they slowly started going through the various different documents and sheets. And boy were the contents unpleasant. Oh goody. All eyes went to Mr. D who looked up from his magazine. What? Wine from the wreckage of an old Spanish gallery was discovered still ripe. Timing Mr. D. Timing. Chiron sighed and nodded to Apollo to go on. Specimen 11. Formula A03. Subject was stable during incubation, but shortly after hatching experienced rapid cellular death and molecular instability that resulted in accelerated aging and organ failure. Further study revealed the cause to be a compatibility failure between the crevice snake and lake gecko DNA. Kabuto-san was most displeased with this but refrained from punishing me this time for my failure. Specimen 67. Formula D52. Subject perished during third week of incubation. Autopsy revealed that the embryotic sac had mutated into a cellular structure similar to the human digestive tract that resulted in the subject being dissolved by the extreme acidity. The cause was revealed to be due to human tissue sample being contaminated with bacterial growth. Need to request new samples during Kabuto-san's next review period. Specimen 294. Formula G10. Subject prematurely hatched during 8th week of incubation due to the unexpected mutation of massive clawed forelimbs. Despite this, the partially developed fetus survived an impressive 2 hours and 35 minutes before perishing. Unable to identify the cause of mutation at this time. Despite this, Kabuto-san was highly pleased with the results during his monthly review. Specimen 300. Formula J117. Subject successfully went through full incubation and survived an astonishing 3 weeks before finally perishing due to sudden respiratory failure. My theory of integrating avian DNA has paid off. Autopsy on the subject revealed the cause of death to simply be the common flu virus as the subject hadn't developed a proper immune system yet. In light of this success, Kabuto-san has requested a fully developed live subject to be transported to the labs in the land of rice paddies. Unknown at this time on how to accomplish this task without breaking cover. With each report they read, the looks of disgust and revulsion on both Naruto and Tenten's faces grew. They weren't the only ones as campers were either pale or green. Whoever wrote these made sure to put down every single detail they could, including how many successful minutes they survived and how violent or gruesome the deaths of the subject was. Hades would make that man be taken to the field of punishment before he could blink. An uneasy Apollo said after reading the reports. Putting them aside, Naruto grabbed the glass box with curiosity. It looked just like the rest of the containment chambers, only smaller and more portable version, lacking the aforementioned life monitor, and the number 301 etched hastily on the side. Selena tapped her chin. Why am I thinking this is going to end like Leo and Stitch? Who and who? Nico asked confused. Leo and Stitch is a Disney movie where this so-called evil scientist made a bunch of experimental organisms for a villain named Hamster Wheel or something. Each one was named a number and I am wondering if this so-called eccentric scientist is the equivalent. Oh, while he was focused on this, Tenten had switched to the journals. Artemis was right, Kemek was the one who used this place. He was trying to develop a formula that would give someone the perfect blend of reptilian abilities. Athena would give him pointers. Or send Medusa his way, Hunter 8 said with a frown. She said as she flipped through several pages before pausing on one in particular. Worse yet, he had the support of a hidden village. Though it must be pretty new cause I've never heard of Otogakur or this Kabuto before. When her statement was met with silence, the weapon addict glanced up to see Naruto holding the container up to the light as he looked closely at the perfectly white fist-sized egg that it contained. What is that? D ruffled his magazine. An egg. Get your eyes checked, girl. Don't know, but whatever it is, it's still alive, Artemis said with narrowed eyes as she and Naruto saw a faint outline of the creature wiggling within its shell prison. And ready to hatch. Okay, I've seen enough horror movies to know how this goes. Do not let that thing out of sight while I seal these up, there is no way we're leaving this. Tenten said with dead seriousness as she pulled out some blank scrolls and ink. Neither Naruto or Artemis argued with her as they kept their eyes firmly on the unusual egg. It only took the brunette a minute or so to seal away the clutter of paperwork and to stuff the finished scrolls into her equipment pouch. In that time though, the cavern around them shook again, though much more violently than before. So wish to learn that skill. Apollo whined along with his children and the Athena campers. Well, they better extract themselves from that cavern before there's a cave-in. Marion said as he looked in a mirror. Let's get the hell out of here, this place is ready to fall apart. She said, getting a nod from the blonde as he was about to put the box back down only for Tenten to stop him. Keep it, I'd rather not risk whatever it is possibly getting out when this place crumbles. Seeing her point, Naruto tucked the container under his left arm carefully before they both sprinted off. This is what you get for building a base like this under a marshland without any kind of support structure. I can just imagine Athena ranting about the stupidity of it now. Artemis said with a nostalgic sigh. Everyone chucked at the truth of that statement. As the place shook once more, before shaking her head suddenly with a look of confusion. What in Tartarus? Why do I suddenly feel sad all of a sudden? So lost in her thoughts, she didn't even notice as her host and his partner finally found a way out in the form of a stone staircase built into one of the walls. This in turn led to a large stone wall that held a complex-looking seal that Tenten identified as a user-specific chakra lock while slapping several explosive tags over it, then dragging Naruto behind cover as the papers ignited. Tags? Really? Why not a bomb? Greenshade looked over at the Hermes camper who asked the question. SSSHHHH. Artemis only snapped her from her thoughts when the resulting blast caused her to fall over in her prison with a splash. What the hell was that? She demanded as she got up, ignoring the muffled snickering of the fox behind her as she shook water off of herself. That's what you get for not paying attention, sis. Apollo had to remember to tease his sister about this moment as it was golden. Tenten blasting the exit open, duh. Naruto thought back with a raised eyebrow. How could you have missed that? She didn't. Phoebe giggled at the replay going on the phone of Mr. D. The seal tightened up a bit and I was cut off briefly. The moon goddess lied, making Naruto nod in acceptance. Liar, liar, sister's a liar. Apollo. What? She is too, mom. The fox tried something, Naruto asked, his mental voice shaking slightly as he spoke of the beast he held. The truth had been revealed to him shortly after Tsunade had diagnosed Artemis. Apollo frowned at the terminology. As the third had figured, there was a very likely chance that the trapped Olympian would end up telling him about it anyway. The revelation had been pretty hard on the enigmatic blonde and Naruto had spent several days in an unresponsive state of denial. It had taken Shizune, Iruka, and Hiruzen combined efforts to both get him to accept his condition and believe that he wasn't the fox itself turned human or other such malarkey. Anyway, back to the present, Artemis simply a short yes, before falling silent again as she contemplated her compulsive reaction, though this time making sure to stay aware of her surroundings. Leto shook her head. Stepping through the still smoking gap that had been created, Naruto and Tenten found themselves inside a small sparsely decorated room with a plain futon, a kitchenette, and a sliding door that had been knocked off its hinges to reveal the marshy outside with hundreds of turtles milling about in the hillside the building was attached to. Looks almost, homie, almost like the big house but without the army of turtles in the marsh. Kowalski said slowly, making the other hunters and campers nod in agreement. Must be the weirdo's home, Naruto thought as he took a brief glance around, spotting several turtle-based trinkets and such lying around in random places as they walked outside. Ya think? Travis asked sarcastically. Let's head back to Imoka, we need to report this to the princess and our senseis right away. Tenten said while patting her equipment pouch. Then what are we standing around here for? Naruto asked rhetorically before jumping up into the canopy and tree-hopping away. Oi, wait for me, the weapon fanatic called after him as she rushed to catch up. D sighed, and K knew threat or problems for Artemis and Apollo's replacement. Not cool, D. After they left, the tremors settled down again and a calm silence filled the area. Birds started to return to their perches, tweeting their songs to each other while the turtles on the forest floor continued to waddle about in search of food. The peace was swiftly shattered again not even a minute later though when yet another quake shook through the area, this time followed with a series of large spiderweb cracks that spread across the earth rapidly. The land then started sinking down as the weight of the earth was no longer able to support itself. Just before it could fully collapse though, and in turn bury the lab underneath along with its horrific contents, something suddenly burst through the ground. Whatever had done this was mostly from view by the resulting cloud of smoke and dirt, with only a hulking shadow roughly 30 feet tall in view alongside a glowing orange eye full of bloodlust and insanity. RAAAAAA. With Naruto and Tenten. Ah. Leto tapped her chin, baby Godzilla. My lady, I doubt Artemis and Naruto's luck would be such they would face a real Godzilla. Chiron said calmly. Besides, the last one belonged to Ares as a pet in the 1950s. Campers all blinked at that news. Godzilla is real? A pale Connor asked in worry. Both genin stopped in their tracks as the powerful roar reached their ears, making the hair on the back of their necks stand up as a literal wave of malice washed over them. Turning around, they were only just able to catch sight of the massive dust cloud that had formed behind them before they were forced to jump out of the way of a massive torrent of fire that completely obliterated everything in its path. You were saying, I stand corrected. Unfortunately, Naruto hadn't managed to react in time to escape unscathed, and his right arm was ever so briefly engulfed by the passing inferno, roasting off the sleeve of his jacket in seconds and scorching the skin underneath. Crying out in agony, the pain caused him to lose focus on his surroundings and he ended up harshly smashing into the branch he'd been aiming for. Ooh, winced the hunters who knew that feeling. The force of the impact snapped the branch with ease, sending him tumbling through the underlying canopy until he hit the muddy ground below with a splat. Then, as if to add insult to injury, just as he slowly lifted his head up to see something massive and reptilian crashing through the incinerated landscape and towards the village, the case he'd been carrying landing on his head with a cracking sound before landing in the mud next to him completely unharmed with its contents intact. Apollo